This episode of the Nerd Corporation podcast may contain spoilers and explicit language. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to the Nerd Corporation.
What up, everybody? It's Thursday, and you know what that means.
I'm going to say this one again because I love it. We're going to come vibe with you.
Fuck you. You leave my Snapchat escapades alone.
You haven't done it for a while.
I was going to say,
haven't.
do you still do that?
I do it every once in a while.
Didn't someone bully you? And you like...
Besides Derek. Well, no.
Well, like someone,
It was...
like, you had your feelings about it.
I did.
It was mean, right?
Yeah, because they were like, oh, dude, I just skipped through your fucking snaps. Because I used to do them hella long.
Yeah.
And so... but it's podcast day.
Yay!
Welcome to episode 99, Survive and Endure. We're going to be talking about the first Last of Us.
Surviving indoors.
The first of The Last of Us.
The first of The Last of Us. And we're going to talk about our thoughts and first impressions of The Last of Us 2. But first, let's get on with the nerd news.
So, we've got some big news, which I feel is long time coming, and God bless him. The Undertaker has announced his retirement.
Finally.
No way.
He has.
Okay.
Like, he basically, I mean, from what it sounds like, is he announced it on the last episode of The Last Ride,
Oh, okay.
is what happened. Like, he said,
I thought you were going to say The Last of Us.
He's announcing it on our last
so
episode.
wow. So here's The Undertaker. So basically, through this Last Ride series, you know, he's sort of come to terms with his career, and like he's always the type of person that's been, you know, harder on himself than anyone else.
Yeah.
Right. And so, yeah, he made the announcement in the last episode of The Last Ride. I mean, so he debuted in 1990 for some perspective.
Yeah.
He's fucking 55 years old.
Yeah.
And he's still wrestling.
55 in wrestling years is like 100.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And he's won every championship out there, and I mean his WrestleMania streak. There's literally nothing left for him to accomplish.
Exactly.
And so he said, "I'm at a point. It's time this cowboy really rides away. There's nothing left for me to conquer or accomplish." I mean, that could have been said a decade ago.
Exactly.
And they, you know, I don't know if it's been him this whole time or the WWE that's kind of trying to milk it, but like, thank God. I mean, he deserves it.
Yeah, I mean,
he really deserves
he's been, and like if you've been watching the Last Ride series on the WWE Network, he's always been the type that if Vince needs him, he's there.
Yeah.
He's always been the type that if Vince is like, dude, I think we need some ratings bumps, or hey, I think we really want to make a pop, so would you? And if he felt up to it, he was, I mean, in the series, he had gotten a hip replacement, and then he felt good, and he was like, yeah, no, I'll go back. And then his other hip needed replaced. It's long overdue. I mean, you know, you've got kids and shit, and
I mean, I'm sure he's got grandkids by now.
Yeah.
Like,
AJ Styles is calling you out by now.
I know, I was going to say, curse you, AJ Styles!
And he goes on to say, this documentary has helped me discover that and open my eyes to the bigger picture and not judge myself as harshly these last few years. I can do more good outside the ring than I can inside. I'm finally at a place where I can accept that.
Yeah, I think a producer role is going to be way good for him.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and just being back there.
And all of that knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Like,
holy shit, dude. Can you imagine being taken under the Undertaker's wing?
Right, exactly. Like he is definitely one of the more important locker room leaders.
Oh yeah.
So fucking good on you, Undertaker. We hope you have many years of life left and you enjoy your time off.
And thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for everything.
All of it.
Good
Thank
Lord.
you for being like one of my consistently all-time favorite wrestlers.
Absolutely.
And thank you for being a friend.
Oh, yeah. Hey, we started from.
Did you just notice that there was a stranger in the house?
Wait a minute, fuck is that? Speaking of strangers,
You have a guest.
we have a guest, Dallin Gilbert. Say hello.
Hi, I'm Dallin.
Dallin is one of our longtime listeners and contributors to the podcast, so he gets to have fun with us today.
Known the boy for years.
Boy.
Wrong PlayStation exclusive.
Wow.
Yeah, that's fair.
But since we're doing an episode on an exclusive anyways,
Yeah.
Still relevant.
yeah. So we have finally got confirmation that Skate 4 is in development.
Fuck yeah. Dude, and that came out of nowhere.
It
Dude,
did.
Shadow
So-
drop.
Yeah.
So, do we know if it's Skate 4 or do we
No,
know
it's
if it's
EA
like a
has
revival of Skate?
EA has confirmed that it's Skate 4.
Skate 4?
Yeah.
Cool.
And
Cool.
Curse you,
Go
EA!
because I still have Skate 3 on my Xbox, and I will still play that like now from time to time.
I played the first 2 Skate games, and that was about it. Like,
Yeah, Skate 3 was the one that where I played the demo of it, and I was like, yeah, this just doesn't feel the same. And then, but Skate 2, holy shit, if I had every hour back that I put into Skate 2, fuck, man, I'd probably
I just
be
love
more
Skate
successful.
3 because of and I can't remember if he's in any of the older games, but Jason Lee is Coach.
He's
Frank.
only in 3, yeah.
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 He's such a funny character, but I remember playing the first one for the first time and just I was trying to play it like Tony Hawk and I'm like, this doesn't jump. What the fuck?
yeah.
Bro, I used to get so fucking bezaked and play fucking Skate, bro.
He had to go Snoop Dogg with
Holy
it.
shit. I used to get so stoned and play that game for hours. Hours, bro. Just listening to that soundtrack, because the first soundtrack in the first Skate game was fucking awesome.
And there's a couple games on Steam that are emulating Skate. There's a Skate XL.
Yeah.
And there's Session, and I have Session, and it's really cool. It's just it plays exactly like Skate, but there's no objectives. You're basically just
Skating
going
around.
around. And
That's right.
it'll tell you, hey, go skate this, go jump these stairs, but like that's it. So,
Right.
But
Jeez.
That's rad.
that has been, I know that's been like a long time coming for a lot of fucking people. I don't know. I don't think they posted anything about it's in development, so there's nothing else beyond.
Yeah.
that.
Hell yeah. Well, let's cut the news off there and just get on to the subject of the hour because we're going to be talking about this game
A long time.
for a minute. The Last of Us Part 1. I mean,
Yes.
holy shit. Like, this game, even now, like, I mean, it was released in 2013, remastered in 2014 for the PlayStation 4.
Yep.
It was the
Which is what I picked
PS3 swan song.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was definitely, and boy, what a swan song. Like,
Mhm.
holy shit.
I'll never forget the day that I first played the first Last of Us. I didn't have a PlayStation 3 at the time, so I couldn't play it. And my buddy James was like, he came through. He's like, you have to play this game. I'm gonna let you borrow my entire system, this game, and whatever Series Gold or whatever headset was out at the time.
Mm.
And I sat in my room and 3 days straight I played that game. I remember when the remaster came out, I was living over in the exact apartment that Eddie's living in right now.
That's
Oh,
true.
yeah.
And I had my roommate's girlfriend, because I had to work, I was like, I need you to go to GameStop and pick this up for me and bring it back. And that was the same day that we all got Warped Tour tickets. So when I got home from work, I had that and a Warped Tour ticket like sitting on the counter. And I was like,
Beautiful.
this is it. And I played that game again for another 3 days straight.
See, I don't remember, because it didn't come with PS4, did it?
It didn't launch with PS4.
No.
It came out a couple of months afterwards.
See, and I don't
It
remember
was like
how I
May?
even heard about it.
No, it was the first PS4 bundle, though, because that's how I got it. Was when I bought my first PS4
Okay.
before it broke, and I got
think
the
you're right.
Arkham Knight
Because,
one.
yeah, I don't think I
Yeah.
got my PS4 right off the bat.
No, I didn't
No.
either. I didn't
Yeah.
get it until
There
2014.
was no fucking reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like Killzone and Infamous, and it was like, those are great games.
I mean, I
but,
love
like,
Infamous.
Oh,
I actually got the Killzone bundle for my very first one. For
Yeah.
one of my
Cole and I
birthdays.
got the Glacier White PS4
With Destiny.
with Destiny. Very, very late 2014.
Yeah. 2013 is in runnings of like one of the worst years of my life.
It's the year you met me and started dating me.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
like that was
He
the
stands by
tail
it.
end.
It's a fucking terrible year.
I didn't stutter.
That's when the problems arise. No, 2012 was a pretty rocky ending to 2012 for me. And I had to move back with my parents, and that wasn't fun. I had a lot of issues with public opinion, and I spent a shit ton of money on this sound system in my car that eventually blew up that year for no fucking reason at all. I got cheated on and dumped by a girlfriend that I'd been seeing for a long time.
Not me.
Not you. And I got fired from my job, all in a span of like a month and a half.
Oh shit.
And so I started a new job, the job where I'm at right now, and it was very uncomfortable because it was a completely different shift, like a 12-hour shift as compared to an 8 to 9 hour shift, and it was really, really fucking hard work, and I just wasn't used to it. And I saw a trailer for this game, and I was like, yeah, I'm still into video games. I'll check it out, And I remember looking at the trailer, looking at the reviews, and I was like, fuck, I don't even have a PS3. And so I went and bought a PS3 just to play this game. And I just remember not being able to stop.
Yeah.
I remember playing it. Go to work, think about it all night, come back and play. Like,
Yeah.
those days were days where I was not getting sleep, like, really at all, because it was just so much fucking fun. And this game has a lot of emotional resonance for me. It kind of helped me out through a lot of shit. And it's very special. Not only to me, but to a lot of people as well. So
The game for me, I don't really quite remember where I was or what was happening. I was being a knucklehead. I remember just starting it up and the very beginning. Like, it was, I don't know, like it's rough.
You can tell
that game starts with a gut punch.
Yeah.
I mean,
Which
it just
is
you
what
know.
the second one also starts with.
it's pretty wild because it's not really subverting expectations, but it's the way that they go about it. Because you see this and you think like, oh god, it's another generic fucking zombie video game. Third-person shooter from PlayStation, which wasn't really a thing back then, but it is now, like... So you're kind of sitting here wondering, like, rave reviews, this has got to be something. And I don't know about the rest of you guys, but, like, the second you boot that fucker up, it feels like it's of a different quality
Oh yeah.
than other games. Like, even the very minimalistic UI design, like...
Well, you boot the game up, and even sitting at the title screen with that title screen
with the
music,
window and the music.
the music
it's so,
is
Mm.
you couldn't put that music in any other game.
well, yeah,
Like,
and it's
distinctly
pretty,
The Last
it's
of Us.
wistful, it's like it really
It's
just
ominous.
Yeah, it's you boot the game up and you see just a window and this, press any button, slowly fades into it with just this very dreary music. It sets the tones
and
quite
there's,
nicely.
Like, the lights kind of coming through the
You
race.
see
Well,
it raised.
it's an abandoned house, obviously. Like, you can tell nature has reclaimed the house.
yeah.
And then we begin the game. We begin the game with
Joel.
Joel is this, at this point, he is I would say,
Well,
mid-30s.
You
That
actually
technically
start the
begin
game
as
as
his
Sarah.
daughter.
Yeah, so I'm just talking about the first cutscene.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like, so we start with Joel coming into his house. He's talking about how he really needs this job, this construction job with Tommy. And he's like, he's coming home really late. Like, it's before midnight. And Sarah, his daughter, is asleep on the couch. And so when he comes in, it wakes her up. And he sits down. He's very obviously stressed with real life. Like, money's not going right. He makes a joke to Sarah about how, she gets him this birthday gift because it's his birthday, right? And it's this watch. And it's, the watch is pretty important.
Oh, very.
And he looks at it, and it's a really fucking nice watch. So he's like, he's like, how the hell did you get the money for this? And she makes a joke about, oh, I sell hardcore drugs. And then he makes a comment. He's like, oh, good, you can help out with the mortgage. Then. You know,
It's about time you start pulling your weight.
Yeah, like it's pretty clear that like he's kind of just this stressed out dude. Like, you know, he's got a loving relationship with his daughter, and you know, with a little bit of time fast forwards, it's this cool, you know, endearing scene of him carrying his daughter up, putting her in bed, and then she wakes up in the middle of the night, and by a phone. Right? Because Tommy calls the home phone.
Mm-hmm.
And so she misses the call just barely, tries calling back, and he doesn't answer. So now you're playing as Sarah.
Oh, wait, doesn't she actually talk to him?
She doesn't.
That's right, yeah.
She does, but it cuts out.
Like she answers the phone and then it cuts out. Yep.
Yeah, she's like, Uncle Tommy? And
you're right.
he's like,
You're both
where's
right.
your dad? And
Yep. So now we're playing as Sarah and we're walking around the house, and we start seeing like little knickknacks here. Like this is obviously a house that's lived in. You know, Sarah's room is adorned with like band posters and like movie posters and all kinds of like teenage girl shit, you know. And there's a little card that you can interact with, which is Joel's birthday card that she forgot to give him. And then you start walking out in the hallway. You go into his room. His room is kind of cool because like there's this. Isn't there an elliptical in there or something?
there's
like
like
that?
a treadmill that's just got clothes draped over
Yeah.
it. Which is coincidentally, I think, what our treadmill at our house has.
Yeah.
I think that's every treadmill in
Yeah.
every house. But
Just a nice hanging place.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's you go in there, the TV's on. The TV is on a news channel, and they're talking about something that's going on downtown.
In Austin.
Yep, this takes place in Austin, Texas, and you're looking at the TV, and the reporter seems distressed, and all of a sudden a bomb goes off. And so it goes off on the TV, and then you look outside, and then there's a bomb going off somewhere in a city somewhere near you. And so this is kind of like when it's like, oh, okay.
This is serious. Yeah.
Something's not right.
Getting real.
So you walk downstairs, and you see this shit's like etched in my fucking mind. You walk down the stairs, and you see the police cars whizzing past your house in the open windows. You walk over to the kitchen, and you see the little, it looks like an HTC phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a sign of the times. And,
Oh, yeah.
and it's obviously it's Joel's phone because you look at it and then like there's a bunch of text messages and missed calls from Tommy, like, where the hell are you? Pick up, and like 5 missed calls. And so now you're walking over to this, like, they're like French doors into another room.
It's almost like a study room.
Yeah. Like a computer room.
Yeah.
Office.
An office, yeah. And Joel comes in and is he covered in blood at this time? I don't think so. Is he really?
I
think he's got some splattering because he went to go see the neighbor couple because he had seen them before, and he was like, they're acting really weird.
Okay.
He's got some, but he gets more here.
So he comes in a frenzy, like from the sliding glass door. And Sarah's like, whoa, what's happening? And Joel's like rummaging through, you know, the desk trying to find his, you know, safety firearm.
Yeah.
And she's like, hey, you know, what's going on? And then we see a crazed man smash into their, and like before, or it's, he doesn't break through it the first time, but he's like sitting there pounding on it. And Joel's like, oh shit, you know, get behind me. And he finally breaks through the door, and he's like, what's his name?
Oh, I don't remember.
Yeah, I
I
can't
guess
remember.
it doesn't matter, but he's like, hey, calls him by name. You stay back. I don't want to hurt you. And then he just immediately rushes him, and Joel doesn't hesitate and fucking shoots him. And this obviously traumatizes the shit out of Sarah. Sarah's just like, you can see in her face.
Well, she's like, that's the neighbor.
Yeah.
Like, holy fuck, you just shot Mr. What's his name? Like, what the fuck, you know?
And then he comes over and he like grabs her shoulders and he says something to her. And she just goes,
Like, we gotta go.
She just goes, you shot him. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck.
yeah.
Like, the neighbors are acting weird, let's go. And then you see Tommy show up.
So we run outside. We see what's really cool is, and you can see it in the PS3 version, but in the PS4 version, it's a lot better looking. Where Tommy pulls up and the headlights are beaming through the open front windows. That's so fucking cool, and like the way that this scene is shot, and like Joel's got Sarah by the hand and like pulling her through the door, and so now we meet Tommy. Tommy is Joel's little brother. I don't know by how much. Probably not much. Probably like 2 or 3 years.
Well, and they're close too, so
They're very close.
They grew up close together.
And so you get in his car, and Tommy's like, "Holy fuck! Have you heard what's been going on?" And Joel's kind of just like, "Hey, let's not talk about this in front of Sarah."
Get the awesome perspectives where you can move around the Jeep and like look out behind you to the side.
Yeah,
so this whole time you're still playing as Sarah.
Yeah.
And so you're in the back of the car, and then you take control of really only the camera, but when you look to the left, Sarah like moves her whole body over to the left hand.
Presses up against
the left hand window of the car. Same thing with the right side. So you're just driving through, and you drive past a bunch of cop cars. You drive past a burning barn. They're Joel and
no, it's not a burning barn. It's a house.
That's right. Yep,
it's
a
a
house.
full because they talk about how
hope that son of a bitch made it through.
Yeah, and Sarah's starting to freak out. So Joel's like, "I'm sure they made it out. They're fine."
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Joel, very loving father. You can tell he's just trying to comfort her in the worst time. So we drive past that, and Joel and Tommy are talking just kind of like intermittently about what's going on. Like, hey, did you hear what happened here? Did you hear what happened here? And the whole time Joel's like trying to stay positive about it. He's trying not to scare Sarah about it.
And then there's the radio. They turn the radio on.
Yep, they turn the radio on, and they're talking about it. And Joel turns it off, doesn't he? He's like, "Oh, we don't need to listen to that."
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of, now that I think about it, it's kind of foreshadowing the way that Joel kind of handles things.
Yeah.
Like, if it's not there, then you don't have to worry about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, just kind
like
of
very minimally.
out of sight, out
very,
of mind.
Yeah, very minimally. But like, it's almost kind of like a selfish need. Like, hey, we don't need to talk about this.
It's
We don't
like
need to hear this.
when we were coming over here, Dallin, I think, was mentioning the workers at the truck rally getting tested positive.
Yeah.
And I was like, and if we don't test, then the numbers go down.
Exactly.
Because we just don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and police brutality rates would go down too if nobody was recording.
Well, and it's
Nobody
also
committed any crimes.
It's also like in the car ride, they're talking about, at first it was only in the big cities,
right.
and then so all the small communities were like, "Oh, we're fine, we're safe,"
Yep.
which is exactly what's fucking going on right now.
It's
Because
terrifying.
because I see posts from people here in Logan that are just like, "Oh, it's not a problem." I'm like, "Yeah, but it will be eventually."
Yeah. So we're still on the road.
Play this game.
Yeah, it's gonna really calm your nerves because you'll be like, "Oh, it could be a lot worse."
Well, I think that this is necessary. You know how a lot of people use the term necessary watching or necessary reading? I think this is necessary playing. Like, I personally, and this is the way I feel about number 2 as well, I think that this is just something you should probably play.
It's essential.
Yeah.
I mean, it is.
Yeah, honestly, like, it's like you said before, Cole. There's games before The Last of Us, and there's games after The Last of Us. Mm-hmm. And it's true. This game is so, what's the word? Poignant?
Poignant. Yep.
This game
Important.
it's one of those games where, if you're a gamer and you love story-driven games, like, there's no way you shouldn't.
Yeah,
play
I mean,
this
I was gonna say it's one of the peaks of storytelling in a game
in media.
Yeah,
in
I
such
think
a long time.
I think we just need to get to that point where it's not just games; it's like media in general.
I'm gonna gas Cole up just for a second, but almost every close friend that we've ever encountered that hasn't played this game, Cole has bought the game for them because he thinks that it's so important that they play this
Absolutely.
game.
Yeah.
It's something that you need to see. It's something. It's one of the best stories in any kind of medium. Like, you need to play this game.
Well, and it's not really in the form of storytelling, but and of course it is, because the storytelling is actually fairly minimum. Like, it's a pretty cut and dry story. Get A to B, and everything in between,
and kill a bunch of infected.
Yeah,
and living people.
But the thing is the fact that it's the character writing and the character development and a lot of shit that's not said.
Well, I was gonna say it tells as much story with what it doesn't say as what it does say.
And I was gonna say
probably
that
more.
If you for some reason still haven't played, I know there's people that haven't played this game, but
stop playing Call of Duty.
Yeah, if you're like, just another, and you mentioned it earlier, Cole, another, zombie shooter. It's like, yeah, but these aren't zombies. They're infected. Like, you can kill them by like choking them out,
Yeah.
and breaking their neck, and you don't have to shoot them in the head. So they're a whole different type of breed.
Yeah, it feels almost like we're undermining them, calling them zombies. They're not. They're like a mix between. Has anybody seen that movie called The Crazies?
Yeah.
They feel because they're still humans.
They're just being controlled by a parasite.
Yeah.
Right?
And
Because they can just
technically-
die of starvation, can't they? Because they just eventually will die if they don't feed.
Yeah.
Or at least that
So
I
we'll
kind of
get
got that
into it.
vibe from it.
We'll get
and
into
so,
it.
like, but these people aren't dead.
Yeah.
Like,
So
No.
they never die.
well, when they're clickers, they're not human anymore.
Well, that's where the
That's after a long time, though.
So
Fungus?
we'll get into it because I want to talk about because they went through a great deal to introduce life cycles for this thing.
Yeah.
Like there are different like phases of cordyceps, and it's fucking rad. And the fact that they use a real life thing
Yeah.
to do this, like it jumped from insects and small animals to humans, is like mind-blowingly brilliant.
is
Because there's
very
the possibility.
sobering.
Yeah,
And it's completely possible.
Yeah.
Like, that's the terrifying
Yeah,
part is like...
I feel like they had a disease and infection specialist like helping them as they created the story.
Oh, absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. Yeah, they didn't. So we're also going to be talking about not only the game, but the a little over an hour documentary called Grounded Mode. You can find it on YouTube.
It's awesome.
It's absolutely awesome. It's again, it's necessary reading for this game because it goes into like pretty much everything with the game. So, and this is where they talk more in the deep about cordyceps and not only that, but like Neil Druckmann briefly mentions like, hey, we saw it on planet Earth one time and we thought it'd be cool. But he goes like way deeper into it. Like I'm pretty sure they did have like a biology specialist come
sure.
in.
Or they were just super stoned, watch Planet Earth, we're like, we're making that a game.
Yo, what if
What if it went from the animal to the human?
Foreshadowing.
And
No, I
Neil
can't even
Druckmann's just
fathom.
like, dude.
That's cool.
What if?
Where's some
I
paper?
was,
We need to write this shit
I
down.
was messaging my friend Tristan on Snapchat because he was replying to my overload of pictures of the collector's edition, and he's like, I don't get mine until Monday, Amazon fucked me, and I'm like, that's why I canceled my Amazon.
Yeah.
And I was texting him that it was really cool that it came with the message from Neil Druckmann, but
Yeah.
it auto-corrected to drunk man.
Nice.
And I was like, I almost set this as is just because it's hilarious.
Oh, you mean Dr. Uckman?
Dr. Uckman.
I was the one that made that connection.
Yeah, because I'm just like picking up the cards, right? Like we're talking about The Last of Us Part 2 right now. There's a collectible for like superhero cards, and I picked up one card in Seattle, and I was like, I like looked at the name, and I was like,
the
whatever.
thing is that you don't look at the journal entries or like the notes unless I ask you to.
It's not true.
And so you just like put it away, and I was like, that
She's
was Neil
telling-
Druckmann.
Fake
She's
news.
telling all your stories.
Wrong.
I mean, you can believe that if you want. I mean, I was there. I don't know why I would lie about that.
I don't know why you're lying about it either.
Okay.
So continuing
Stop
on.
gaslighting me.
No. You know what's really interesting to think about, though, because when you brought up Planet Earth, so the first Last of Us was really at the beginning of the dawning of true 1080 console gaming.
Yep.
Because
It was.
before that, it was mostly 720, but being upscaled. And
There was
now
a few-
we're in
there
the
was a few
dawning of
titles.
true... Yeah, right, there were
Yeah.
a few, but Last of Us, I'm pretty sure, was one of the first ones.
It
Definitely
ran
was
as
remastered.
well as it did.
Yeah, and then now we're at the dawning of 4K.
Yeah.
Only, 7 years later?
Yeah.
It is pretty wild, and I love the fact that it came out at the end of the PS3 cycle. It
No.
absolutely fucking destroyed PS3s. Like it just could not handle
It's-
PS3s couldn't handle that game worth of shit.
The PS4 can barely handle it.
I know.
Yeah, that's true.
Every time I put that game on, my PS4 hollers at me.
Yeah, it gets pretty upset,
What are
dude.
you doing to me?
I can't do this.
So tired.
It's like, fuck, we don't want to depict these images. God
Even-
damn it.
Even now, like that when I did the replay last week, it's still one of those games that just kind of pushes the PS4.
which is wild because it came out pretty quickly after the launch of the PS4, and it still looks gorgeous. There's still some of that weird honkiness, like of the last generation, still shining through. Some of the animations are weird, and goddamn, I don't know if it was just me, but I like noticed a shit ton of like weird honkiness, like glitches and stuff. Like there was this one moment
tomfoolery
where I'm like crouched down and I'm not trying not to get spotted by an enemy, and like there's a bunch of like parts and stuff above me, and so I was just like repeatedly pressing triangle, and his arms are just like flailing above just to pick everything up, and it's like,
ooh. And sometimes his elbows don't bend, so it just goes. It just looks like something.
One thing I love about the first one too is when you're, and especially when you're in the beginning, when you're creeping around with Tess, and she'll move from cover to cover in plain sight of the enemy, but they're just they don't even see her.
No, what are you kidding? They always got me killed. Tess would run into one of the infected, and then all of a sudden the infected knew where I was. Same with
See, not for me. Like they could just run around at will.
Oh my god, I was sneaking around, choking one guy out.
Well,
as I do on a Tuesday.
I was talking about the part where you're going to try and find the guy about your weapons, and you're sneaking around in that like very first part
in that little dock area.
Yeah, and she'll like move to cover, and there's a guy like walking toward her, and he's just like.
Yeah, but I felt like with Infected, it was the exact opposite.
It could have been.
See, like for me, like there were a couple of times where like if Ellie ran like right on top of an infected, then that might trigger it. But like they could be face to face, like 5 feet apart. And she goes from one cover to another, and they're like, no, that's cool.
No, I swear to God, she did it. Maybe it was just my game, and she just ran into the infected on purpose, because she was just like, you're an asshole, so...
YOLO!
I will tell you right now that it does happen in part 2.
Oh.
It does, I full-on got into a huge skirmish with some fucking real-life people. Not real-life people, but like real people in the game, not infected. Because Dina, and Dina came up when we were done and said, hey, I'm sorry, I fucked up. A dead ass happened.
That's so great.
So that one part when...
I can confirm that did happen.
So is it part of the story, or is it just part of the game mechanics?
It's part of the fucking game. It's part of the, I know, it's part of the game.
So like if she aggroes them, she will
you're on top of this roof, and there's like these like ventilation things. They're like triangle dome pieces, and you can crawl underneath them using the new prone mechanic.
Yeah.
And I was underneath, like, watching all these fucking... They're called the WLF, and they're...
Oh, it's where she goes under here, and you're hiding under the...
Yes.
Okay. And she didn't go under there.
So I don't know if that was scripted or not, but I remember being, like, underneath...
So I think that her AI just didn't move her, and then... They recorded banter that's like, oh yeah, sorry, I got caught.
Ellie, get under here. What about you? Oh, I'm good.
Well, and not only that...
I'm invisible, it's fine.
But I do remember there is a part... I do remember that there is this part when you're going into a bank, and Dina was in there and totally ran right in front of a clicker and nothing happened. So I think that they like programmed it to be like, oh, okay, it's just the AI being stupid. The AI in this one is like actually aggravating me, because it's
very Skyrim.
There's been like 2 or 3 times where Dina, and I fucking hate Dina. There's like a fucking doorway. I'm like, because I play these games very methodically. Like I'm like anybody watching me, if you are, if you're like dead and watching me play this game, like. I'm sorry, because it's, like, probably really infuriating to watch me, because I'm, like, constantly going in, checking something out, like, I'll, like, walk out, and I'll be like, oh, fuck, I think I forgot something.
As someone who watches you play, yes, I can confirm.
He's not dead.
Very aggravating to watch you play.
I do the same thing, though. Like, I check every nook and cranny.
So you know.
It takes me forever to play one, just because I check every last thing.
Just so you know... Because we're all past this part. Derek, you haven't really played the game yet. When you get to this bank, and you'll know the bank, there is the Uncharted...
Yes, I know what a bank is.
Well, fuck you. You'll get the...
There's this bank, okay?
You can find the Uncharted ring in there.
Oh,
I was
just
so
really,
happy when I got
really
that.
look for it, because apparently I didn't look hard enough, but I scoured the fuck. Like,
No,
dude, I got
it's-
14 hours in this game and I'm not even halfway done with
It's
it.
in the
Like,
safety deposit box.
See, I was looking at all of them. Was
Really?
it one of them that wasn't open? Because I was looking at all the ones that was open.
Yeah, there are some that you can open on your
Yeah,
like by yourself.
You just
I
have to
didn't
go
even
up to
get- I
the
didn't even get a
wall.
prompt.
Because I was like, oh, I wonder, it's a safety deposit box. I wonder if there's something in here. And there wasn't any for me in the first couple. And then I
Me
opened
too.
it up and it zoomed in on the ring. And all I saw was like the first two letters. And I was like, yo!
Yeah.
I already knew what it was because I have the ring in real life.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
So in the first game, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. You know?
There's some issues.
Ellie, Trish, Sam, Henry, Tommy.
Tess?
Tommy's in there.
Bill.
You mean Tess?
Bill.
Oh,
I say
Bill.
Trish.
Yeah.
Sorry, Devil May Cry.
God, I hated
Tess,
Bill.
yeah.
Bill is such a piece of
I
shit.
loved Bill.
I loved Frank, actually. His note that he leaves for
Oh,
Bill is
I
so
know,
great.
it's so
Like,
great.
fuck you.
So we'll get to
Yeah.
that. So the gut punch in the beginning of this game is we're basically living through quarantine day, or what is it's called
Yeah.
Outbreak
Outbreak
day.
Day.
That's right.
Which is Joel's birthday or the day after.
Oh fuck, that's right.
Yeah, so
I never
he-
connected that.
yeah.
Jesus. So yeah, we're basically just living through Outbreak Day, and that's when the world goes to shit. And there's a moment where we're running. You get in like in a car accident, and it seems like it broke Sarah's leg. So now Joel is carrying Sarah through these streets of Austin, or not Austin.
That's
I guess
where you
it was
switch
just
over
hometown.
to Joel.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, after the car accident, and you're carrying her through these just
Alleyways.
alleyways.
Before
of
that, though,
scared
you get a
people.
little quick time event where you're pushing and kicking the window out, though.
Yep, yep. You're stuck in the car, and you're like kicking the window out so you can get out.
And Tommy's escorting you and Sarah to safety. And
Well, a zombie attacks you as soon as you get out of the car, and fucking that. And coincidentally, that's what hits you is a brick truck. So that's how Tommy has a brick. It's a very, very small detail that I didn't notice until this last playthrough. Because you get attacked by a zombie and Tommy comes up and fucking bashes its brain in with a brick, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, it makes sense how he got the brick. It's not like these really weird pallets of bricks that are just all around these riots.
Yeah.
It's just the
For
weirdest
Oh,
thing.
see, I thought he just had a chisel, went up to one of the walls, chiseled it out slowly.
One moment.
coming.
One moment. I'll be right with you.
I can just
get this brick here.
I can just hear Tommy or Joel just screaming, "Tommy, fuck!"
I'm getting it.
So you're being basically escorted by Tommy because Tommy has Joel's gun, and you get kind of cornered into this little restaurant, and Tommy's holding the door back and says, "Hey, the zombie's on the other side." He says, "Hey, just run. I'll meet up with you later. Get Sarah to safety. Get her some medical attention, whatever." And so now you're just running through this like weird looking hill area,
Yeah.
and you come across a lone soldier, U.S. soldier, all decked out in
It's,
hazmat suit and
National Guard.
big fucking gun, and he's sitting there saying like, "Hey, stop!" And he's just like, "Hey, look." Joel's like, "Hey, buddy, we just went through hell. Like, can you help us out?
We're not
says-
infected.
We're not infected." In the soldier,
He calls up his supervisor or whatever, and he says, "I've got 2 civilians here. Please advise." And they instruct him to kill them, and he's like, "But there's a little girl here."
Yep. There's a little girl, and then he's like, you can just tell like the regret in his voice. He's like, understood, and Joel like tries to run but gets shot, and they like roll down this little hill, and the soldier comes up and is about to shoot Joel, and Tommy comes up behind him and fucking just domes him, and so you at this moment you're thinking like, oh, okay,
Everybody's safe.
everything's all right, and then Tommy like says like, oh no, and looks at Sarah, and then we don't really need to describe this moment. It's pretty fucking
She
sad.
was shot in the stomach, and she's bleeding out and dying.
Well, and it's seeming like it caused a lot of internal damage because she dies rather fast. But the performance from Troy Baker in this moment playing Joel is very poignant. It's very emotional. I don't know about y'all, but I'm pretty sure about y'all. that it's still like there's not a dry eye in the room. Like
No.
it's horrible.
I mean,
it's
when I
really sad.
when I first played that game, I mean, it definitely fucks you up emotionally. But you know, after having had a daughter, I cannot watch that without just
Welling up.
waterworks.
Dude, I
Like
remember when
not
I-
even welling up, just like straight up
yeah.
ugly ass cry. Like
So,
it fucks
Anthony
me up
Anderson on the
hard.
couch.
So odd because I was hard as a rock.
No, it
Different experiences for everyone.
It fucks me up so bad.
You might want to elaborate that.
Before I started up grounded mode, which I'm still on and will forever
God damn,
be on.
it's so fun.
I was like, all right, I got this time through.
Yeah.
I'll get through the part. Part comes up, but I'm just like, no, I don't.
It's rough,
I don't.
man. Well, and what's really fucking cool about it, besides, you know, it not really being cool at all, is it really it just cements that tone for the rest of the game.
Mhm.
This is not a game that's going to make you, like, really happy at all. Like,
It's not a feel good.
this is
happy
not,
times.
and that's kind of like why I'm kind of confused with all the vitriol around part 2 with its violence and with its themes and its shit. And it's like, what? Did you play the original? Like, it's not
Just
fucking
for-
happy-go-lucky jump on a turtle. Like, it's not.
Just for comparison, it's like the arguments about Game of Thrones and how the last season was so awful, and you just have to remind the fans, did you not watch like every other season? Like, it's full of just like
No bueno
everything.
shit.
Yeah.
It's a very, very heartbreaking scene. And I just remember thinking, like, oh, this is heavy. It's a child death this early in a video game. Like, this is...
Yeah,
And
because
I-
it's
and I was-
only, what, like 30 minutes of gameplay tops?
Maybe. Like,
15
like,
to 30?
Well, a little bit more than that.
With
It
the
depends on how much you,
stuff.
obviously. If you're, like, fucking running through it, then yeah. But, like, the way that I see it is, like, it just really, really sets that tone. And one of the defining achievements of this title is the fact that it doesn't ever betray that tone.
Mhm.
Ever. Like, it continues to be that exact same way the entire game.
Even through the moments of levity, there are still those...
Tinges of sadness.
Yeah, like there's still that dreary undertone behind them.
Yeah. So, after that fucking heartbreaking shit, it skips ahead 2 decades. And we get a very grizzled Joel waking up from a nightmare in some bombed out apartment in Boston. And, you know, obviously we know it's 20 years because it comes up big, bold white letters 20 years later.
Press Gothic font.
Yeah, this is the only part that lost me because there's no way a white dude looks that good 20 years later.
Hey,
Like,
if he's a hillbilly... then-
well, I guess that's true.
Well, you know...
Keanu Reeves, who's the other? Tom Cruise.
Well, but that's Scientology. They're just...
That's that Xeno...
No.
They have their own Lazarus.
It's
Keanu-
themselves.
is
It's
Keanu-
themselves from
Is
children.
Keanu Reeves Scientologist? Please tell me Keanu Reeves
I don't think he
not.
is.
I
Oh,
hope
God.
not.
He's a good person, so
He is.
no.
That's true. That's true.
Okay.
We show up.
So, yeah. I
So
mean,
20 years
obviously he looks pretty rough, but he also does look kind of good. Once you start thinking about, like, you know, like guilt and stress, and, like, you know, stress is one of the worst things for the human body. You know, like, you wonder if he would live a little worse. But, at the
He's
same
also
time,
bearded, so it might hide a lot
a
of
lot
it.
of it, yeah.
I mean, he does have some, you know, creases and wrinkles
He's very
and
salt
gray
and
hair.
peppered.
You
Yeah.
can tell that he's had a life.
Yeah, and this is where we get to meet Tess. We don't really know a whole lot about Tess. It's kind of implied that maybe they were
I kind of.
shacking up.
Oh, they
I
definitely.
kind of had a thing. for
Yeah,
Tess.
because
She's hot as fuck.
She is hot as
some
fuck.
point later he says, I think it's with Bill, says something about, oh, are you and Tess back together fighting again or whatever.
Yeah, he asks a lot. He's like, "Where the fuck is Tess at?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
You guys are inseparable.
Yeah.
Like,
So-
where's she at?" So really, all we know is that Joel is kind of not a great dude. like,
Well,
Like-
he's just hardened.
He's closed off.
he's very closed off, but he's also done a lot of bad shit. He's a smuggler. Smugglers
Yeah.
don't really have that great of a name for themselves, especially right now. they're kind of known for smuggling all sorts of things, and we don't really get to know
but
the bad things that he's done yet.
I don't get the feeling that he's, the indiscriminate killer of the same caliber as some of the people who are just,
Well, he's not a good guy by
Yeah.
Well, there's a moment in the game where he talks about how he was with the hunters at one point.
Yeah.
So we might bash heads on that because I don't think Joel's a good person.
I don't think he's a great person, but I think he's not still with them for a reason.
I think it's a casualty of the world. I think of the world as it is. I think it turned him into something that was not good at all.
Yeah,
personally.
I mean, you got to do what you got to survive in this
but
situation.
I get that.
I think that whole time he still had that thing in the back of his head of this is fucked up. I don't want to be doing this. To survive, I kind of have to do this, and I have to be a part of this. But I still feel like he has a conscience, and and that's
kind of
what I mean.
But I feel like a lot of the decisions that he makes with his conscience are also rooted in selfishness.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that because I have a whole thing that I want to talk about because at the end of the game, as much as I love the man, I really do, and I love his struggle, I love his story, I love his character progression, his character arc, as you will. I love him. He's one of the greatest video game characters ever written. Seriously, it's masterful shit. But I don't think I'll leave it. I'll leave it for when I'm going to say it. But him and Tess are smugglers. They're kind of known for being, we'll smuggle anything, right? We'll do anything we need to do. And it seems like when he wakes up, Tess is just barely getting back from it. Looks like a scuffle because she's got some, face lacerations. And hey,
right.
He looks over at her and tucks her chin up and says hey, is the guy that did this alive? And she's like, what do you think? Kind of implying hey, we're bad motherfuckers. And we don't. We don't fuck around with nothing. There's it looks like in this quarantine zone, this little camp, this what am I trying to say here?
Settlement.
This little settlement in Boston.
It's a quarantine zone.
Quarantine zone, very heavily regulated by the Fedra. The Fedra is
the Ferda.
The Ferda.
That's my
Fur boys.
Well, my dyslexia kicked in while we were playing.
The gate that says "fuck Fedra" on it. She's like, why does it say Ferda?
Well, no, that's not. I said "fuck Ferda," and he's just like Ferda, and I'm just like, that was a dyslexic moment.
I heard in an interview that Neil Druckmann does not like the show Letterkenny, so he's like, fuck Ferda.
So Fedra is the government.
It's
the remnants of the government, or remains of the government.
It's like they go in and help the hurricane relief.
FEMA?
FEMA.
Oh yeah, it's a lot like FEMA.
It's like FEMA.
But it's pretty much the only form of government that we have right now in this world. And so the Fedra is in this constant war with this other faction called the Fireflies. So the Fireflies are basically
the rebellion.
The rebellion.
Fuck Ferda.
They're like, hey, we don't like how the government is handling this. We're gonna, look for the light. We're gonna create our own world out of this.
Follow the Fireflies.
Yeah, we're gonna do this a lot better than what they're doing because it's pretty clear, the government handled it like our government's handling everything else right now.
Mm-hmm.
Not very fucking well. So everything is just fucked, So that's what created the Fireflies, and there's a hierarchy and everything like that. But it seems like it's pretty much just hey. If you don't like what they're doing, come do it with us. And as the game progresses, you start to realize, oh, they're not really that different.
Yeah.
You know? So we meet Tess, and then we walk down. We're talking about how we're going to go get our guns from a man named... Robert. That's right. Oh, what it was is that someone told her that the guys that jumped her... Robert sent them.
No, no one told her that. She just was like, I know they're Robert's guys. She's just like, I know Robert sent them to kill me.
Okay.
But it's later on as you're sneaking around, you get it confirmed by some of Robert's guys Robert shouldn't have fucking sent them.
Yeah,
that was stupid. I heard she killed 2 of our men.
Yeah. So we start walking through bombed out alleys and streetways of Boston, and doesn't look good. We walk past this one part where they're or this
Haunt out alleys of Boston.
Formed.
Really, I thought it looked about the same as it does today.
Busted cars and bars.
car keys. I lost my car keys and my khakis. So there's this moment when you're walking down the street and there's like this barricaded off little spot where people are watching what these Fedra agents are doing. And these Fedra agents are pulling these people out of this abandoned warehouse, and they're like, lining them up and they're scanning them. They have this tool that'll scan, and it'll say, oh, you're infected, you're not infected, whatever. And so they scan the first 3 people, and they're fine. And then the last one gets scanned, or not the last one, the second to last one gets scanned, and he says, oh, fuck, he's dirty, he's infected. So they fucking kill him right there. And then the last guy sees what happens to him, and so he tries to run away, and they gun him down in the street. Shit is not fucking fun right now. It's not, ain't nobody fucking around right now.
Nobody.
So it's just not a great time to be alive. That dreariness is still continuing, And so you start walking more down the street. You're going, I think you're trying to get out.
Yeah.
But you're trying to do it legally.
Right? You got doctor documents and you're trying to go out. I think it's actually a woman who's infected because she tries to, maybe it's a guy, but she tries to barter with them like, no, I'm fine. Like, and then they just pop her right in the head and it's just, and then the guy runs off and they just spray him down.
Yeah, it's no buenos. It's no buenos.
No buenos indeed.
No buenos.
So we get caught up in this bombing attack from the Fireflies. They bombed one of these trucks. So we're running along and obviously Fireflies do this bombing attack and then we get caught up in it. So we're running away and we think, okay, well we'll just do it the way we always do. And there's like these little underground taverns or caverns that they've dug up. This is where you like drop down and you get your weapons, you get your backpack, and it like shows you picking up your gun and everything. There's the flashlight and all that shit. So you're going out and about with Tess, and we'll skip a little bit of stuff. There's some exploration, and it introduces the infected. They're just kind of we went into them. They're fucked up people that are very still much people that are like trapped in there, which is fucked up.
And it's also where you get introduced to the spores.
Yeah.
Yep, spores. The two types of infection that we see in this opening part is obviously they call them runners. They don't call them zombies. They just call them runners because they'll just sprint at you. And they're unrelentingly brutal.
It's like I was saying, they're not actually zombies too.
Yeah.
So.
And they swarm in packs. So like if you start, you have a pretty brutal melee system in this game where you can just punch them really hard. But if they attack you, multiple ones attack you, they can swarm you, and you have like a very minimal chance of being able to escape just by pressing and holding the sprint button and running away from them.
Oh yeah, and in grounded mode, it's one hit.
Yeah.
And that's it. You can't...
I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Grounded mode changes a man.
Very, very correct.
Like, they don't fuck around in grounded mode. Also, as Angela said, we find the spores. It looks like the spores are... what happens when an infected reaches the end of their life cycle and they're about to die. So what happens, and they explain that in this part too, where they'll lay down someplace and die and basically become part of the environment.
It's like rapid decomposition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like your body, for the first little bit, your body is still pretty visible, but it gets to the point where you're just like overgrowing on the ground or on the wall or whatever. And what comes out of your decomposing body and becoming part of the environment are these little spores that go up in the air.
It's how it affects people.
Yeah, if you breathe that in, you're fucked.
So it introduces the gas mask.
Mechanic.
There's a fucked up part where a guy is like on the ground and his mask is broke, but he's pinned, and he's like, "Hey, I don't want to turn, just kill me." And Tess asks you like, "Hey, what do you want to do?" And I don't know about you guys, but I always
absolutely.
I always just kill him.
Yeah, no, that
and it's fucked up, like the way that it like is animated, because it like shows like the bullet entering his fucking brain, and like the way that he like reacts to being shot in the head. It's like shockingly realistic. And it depends on where you shoot him too, because if you shoot him in the mask, like in the face, like there's another hole in the mask, which is fucked up that someone took the time to animate that. So we're continuing on. What else happens? Because there's some stuff that happens before we get to Robert, right? Or we're basically just cutting through this part where we're not supposed to be. By
so
the
you
way.
get out into daylight, and then you have to go find the ladder, go up.
Oh
and
yeah,
then you
ladder
And,
mechanics.
and isn't this where you're also kind of like skirting around, like trying to hide from people spotting you from the street?
No,
No,
that's when we have Ellie.
Okay.
Yeah, so most of this part is just kind of teaching you the basic mechanics of the puzzle solving part of the game, where you hand wooden planks to your companion or whatever, and they pull shit up.
Yeah. So it's pretty cut and dry stuff.
Yeah.
We don't really come across any human enemies, but we get to this other part. It seems like we cross from one quarantine center to another, but this doesn't seem like it's Fedra. I could be wrong there. But...
Not because it's just a bunch of dudes with their guns. It looks like it's just like Robert's men, I guess.
There's like a little section where you can buy a dog, and it says there's like a piece of paper on the fence holding the dog back, and it says 10 ration cards. So like the currency in this world seems to be ration cards and stuff like that, which is kind of cool.
She bribes the kid to make sure it's clear with
That's
the
right.
cards.
Yep.
She bribes the guy before you get to Robert for
I
information.
mean, that's something I wish they had done more with.
Yeah.
But
it makes sense why not, though,
Yeah.
because we're not really dealing with other civilizations.
True.
Pretty much just like other survivors during the
True.
whole game. So now we come across human enemies. I don't mean to speak for you guys, but I felt like at the time when this game came out, this was very revolutionary AI design. Where, like, they will, if you spend too much time trying to figure out where to go and who to attack and, like, trying to figure out your own strategy, they will flank you. They will, like, come across and, like, try to, they're, in their own way,
like
they're
aggressive.
I mean,
And I don't
as
mean
fuck.
to jump the gun, but a good example of it is actually in part 2, where, no spoiler here, but where you run into the dogs, and if you're sitting in the back,
Jesus Christ.
and you'll hear somebody clear down the way, go, get them from the side, and then they'll just be, you don't know which side though, they'll just come around, and they won't necessarily do it to that degree in the first one, but they'll still like find a way to get
Yeah,
behind
it sounds like they really fine-tuned it for 2.
Fucking really
and the
briefly,
dogs,
it's
like, that sounds-
insane.
The
Like,
dogs are awesome because they can sniff you out.
like if you think the AI is aggressive in the first game, the second game takes it to a whole new fucking
Oh
level.
my god.
Especially when the dogs are introduced.
Oh my god.
But so we come across some of Robert's men, and they're like, "Hey, you need to get the fuck out of here." The black guy says something funny where he's like, "Bitch, I will cave your fucking skull in," or some shit like that, and I laugh every time it happens because just the way that he delivers the line is fucking
now
awesome.
that you mention that, it reminds me a little bit off topic, but in the game Hitman Blood Money, when you're going to do your first assassination and you're getting to the main boss, and there's like a gangster like guarding the door, and you walk up and you're this bald white man, and the guy goes, "Gotta check you, white bread." It's like, what time was this ever a thing to say?
It's fucking funny.
Yeah.
I mean, and I love that part though, where like you kind of get into that shipping yard, like just before Robert.
Yep.
And that part for me was so fun to just kind of, think through and figure out like the best way to kill. I love being as stealthy as I can for as long as I can.
Stealth is king.
And so I love just sitting there fucking around, just working on the best way to kill as many people before being discovered as possible.
See, I like to Michael Bay it up, That's my favorite.
Explosions!
It's like I was telling Eddie in 2, there's a part where you are in the subway and you're surrounded by WLF and clickers, and I just threw a stun bomb out, and the clickers took care of everything.
That's exactly what Cole did.
Yeah,
that's what I did. Because there was no bottle, and I was like, no, I don't want to get rid of my stun. I don't want to get rid of this, but it's the only thing that I have besides Molotov. So I threw that, and it was surprisingly effective.
Very.
Yeah. And like watching the AI, the WLF, like run around. We're talking too much about 2. We need to fucking stop them.
I mean, there's a big spoiler. Your subways are still around him.
I mean, they're
The
just
sandwich shop? Oh, good.
Oh, yeah, that's what I thought. The sandwich shop. Sorry.
Thank God.
I couldn't live without Subway.
So
Gotta have my club.
This is the introduction of humans on humans combat. I remember feeling when I first played it the visceral nature of it. Like, enemies react pretty realistically to being hit by fucking chunks of lead.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because like with the clickers or the runners or whatever, they only react one way because that's how their infection is taking hold, and so you know exactly what they're gonna do.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with the human on human, like that opens up like they think.
Yep.
You know, there's so much more.
Not only that, one thing I really appreciate about the game is that, you know, in like almost every other game, you can kill one guy and they'd be like, oh, they killed somebody. And then like 30 seconds later, they're like, oh, whatever. John's dead, but I don't give a shit.
I guess I'll go back on patrol.
But they never they never seem to give up like hunting for you until you either kill them all or escape into a new area.
And this kind of jumps into like what I've been saying for a while about The Last of Us is how it handles its violence. And how it could just be me, but like I just feel like the love, not really the love, but the attention, the care that went into this over taking another person's life in this game.
Yeah.
You feel it. Like all the way down from like, okay, this is my last bullet in my gun. If I can get a headshot, I am safe. I am like, and I feel that's a lot more in 2 as well.
You start off with, when you get your gear, you only have like, what, 2 bullets?
You don't have much. Yeah, this is very obviously a survival game.
Well, and even on top of that, just the decision before you have even gotten to the point of, well, what's the best way to kill this person? Of, do I even need to kill this person? Can I get around without causing any, death or noise?
You can they really emphasize us versus them. Me versus them. You know what I mean? Like, what were you gonna say?
One of the things that I really like and hate about the human on human violence is when you get shot, you're not just and everything goes red.
You fall down.
Yeah,
like, you react to being shot.
And it's such a nice detail, but it also bugs the fuck out of me.
Well, yeah, because it really catches you off guard too.
Because you're disabled pretty much for like that half second.
Well, and not only that, but like also
disabled. I'm disabled.
So speaking also to that other point that I was making is like, so you said you like to be as stealthy as possible.
Yeah.
I think that is like imperative for this game.
Yeah.
Like you have to manage. Even if it's only like, if you come into an area and there's a bunch of dudes, like you at least have to take out a couple of them before you go all out.
You would really.
I mean, obviously, I'm sure you played it differently because you said you.
Particularly with like that first area with Robert's people, I was like, I'm gonna be stealthy, and so I killed the one dude and moved around, and I was like, fuck it, so I just shot the next person and booked it.
So in describing the stealth options, there's a crouch button so you can slowly crouch around and sulk around, and one way to incapacitate an enemy is to just go up behind them and choke them out. But the animation for them choking someone out is horrifying because they're like clawing at your arms and like trying to break your grip,
and I hate to jump to 2, but in 2 it doesn't. The animations don't get any worse.
It's worse.
They took inspiration from a lot of those police videos.
Well, you're not choking them out in 2.
No, you don't choke them out in 1 either. You clearly, because you're doing the arm bar because you were pushing on you're killing them. Yeah, there's no way.
Well, there's no in 2 you're using a knife.
Well, not at first.
Nah.
If you're playing, what's her name?
Oh, yeah, we won't get into that.
Well, anyway.
Debbie.
Yeah. Debbie Downer.
But yeah, just the way
I calls her.
The way that it is, like, obviously, yeah, they're doing the arm bar. Like, you're taking this person's life away from them, and you can see in their face, like, in their face, they've animated their face to be like, I'm dying. I am dying.
You see the terror in their eyes.
But I feel like you kind of have to kill them, because if you just incapacitate them, and let's say they're out for a couple hours, they could then become infected, and that's just going to screw you over later on.
Well, I mean, like if you incapacitate them and they wake up sooner than that, you may still be in the area.
Yeah, exactly.
And they'll be like,
get
him.
I think it kind of goes back to, Joel's past of like, clearly learning to not fuck around. Just
I mean, in this world, you can't.
Well,
you
and
can't do
he's
stuff
got
like that. You
20
gotta-
years of experience.
And
in it,
I also
too,
feel
so.
like any human that you're taking out will not hesitate to do the same.
Right.
to you.
Exactly.
So it's
It's
either
us
me or
versus
them.
them.
Oh yeah.
Yep. So we go through this really cool little bay area, and we eventually come across Robert. And then what ensues is a chase scene. You're chasing him down, and he does this thing where he fires like 3 bullets, and then he runs out of bullets, and he's like, "Fuck!" and he just throws the gun through the doorway. Like, not like I'm gonna guess try to hit one of them,
Yeah.
but it just
Oh, that's it. We're done. I can't. I can't.
I just thought it was funny, but we chase him down and eventually we corner him, and there's a scene where he's on the ground. Tess takes a fucking
Oh yeah.
pipe to his kneecap, and
Ugh.
obviously he's on the ground, he's in a lot of pain, and he's not really saying anything about his guns, because hey, where's our guns at?
Does
Like,
Joel break his arm?
yeah, because he's not saying anything.
Yeah.
Like, they're like, hey, where's our guns at? Like, we paid for those. Like, where they at? And he's like, I'm not telling you shit. And then Joel goes down and pops his arm out of his socket. And he's like, we're going to ask you again. Where's our fucking guns? And he says, oh, I sold them to the Fireflies.
Yeah.
And that does not make anyone happy.
Does not bode
Not at
well.
all. It
And
does.
so, Robert's on the ground, like pleading, and he's like, hey, I know where they're at. Let's go get them. We can kill them all. Like, they're on the run from Fedra. Like, we can go fuck them up. And this is the first time that we know, like, the Fireflies are not doing good. Like,
Mhm.
they're doing about as good as everyone else, probably worse, And Tess, and he's sitting there going like, hey, let's go find them. And then Tess just, like, looks at him, he's like, that's a stupid fucking idea. And then just, like, blasts him right in the fucking face. And so they're sitting there, like, contemplating, like, well, what are we gonna do here?
Let's go get him.
Well, and then he's like, hey, we need to go find the Fireflies. And Joel's like, fuck. And then he looks up, and what do you know? It's the Queen Fireflies. It's the leader of the Fireflies, Marlene. And so she says, hey, we have your guns, but we bought them, so technically they're ours. And Tess is like, no,
They weren't.
we bought them.
They weren't. She says they weren't his to sell.
They weren't his to sell. Yep. So she says, all right, well, you do something for me, I'll give them to you, and then some. Like, we'll give you even more than you have. And so we follow her into this little area, and she kind of lets us know, like, hey, Fireflies ain't fucking doing very well. And then she keeps alluding to the fact, like, hey, I need you to smuggle something for me. And we don't really know what it is at this point. But we go into this room, and Marlene's shot. Like,
Yeah,
she's
I was
like,
gonna say she's
like
already
fucking
injured.
dying. She's and it's she's like bending over and like falling down a lot. And then we come into this room and we get introduced to our second main character, which is Ellie. And Ellie is special in many ways. Voiced by Ashley Johnson. She's a 14-year-old girl.
Mouthy little shit.
Mouthy little shit. She's very, very charismatic.
It's the apocalypse, basically. I mean, of course you're going to be a mouthy little shit.
Right,
Well,
like
not only that-
manners don't apply.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, but she's also born into this. Like,
Yeah.
she's, this is all she's ever known.
Exactly.
Like, she has blood on her hands, too. Like, this is kind of a fucked up world and she has no idea what the world was like before this. This is
Mhm.
all she knows.
Yep.
So,
Which to me is crazy. Who the fuck is having kids during this? Like,
I mean, people gotta fuck, you know?
I would just
Like,
jerk off permanently. I would never, like,
You
no.
think that they don't have condoms? Or
You think that they have condoms?
No, you just jerk
You
off.
have to craft your own condoms.
They're dogs. You can...
I'm
Cloth
guessing.
and tape.
No, I'm saying sheepskin.
you-
Look, I'm
Sheepskin.
guessing
sheets and
somebody's.
testes.
I'm guessing somebody's got a weak pull-out game. That's all. That's all it is.
some of us are good. So, Marlene wants you to smuggle her out. We have no idea why, but hey, this girl is super important. You need to get her to the outskirts of Boston. There's some Fireflies there. It'll take her off your hands. Okay, no one's okay with this idea. Tess is like, fuck.
Like, how do we smuggle
Joel
a
wants
little girl?
nothing to do with it.
Joel is like, fuck that. Like, why would I want to do this?
He's pissed off about it for like the longest time.
Yeah,
like the
he's-
whole time.
Yeah.
He's very, very distant with her. Like, doesn't really want anything to do with her.
Which, of course, knowing his backstory.
Yeah, of course. Like,
Obviously.
you kind of figured, And so we start smuggling Tess. We start smuggling her with Tess, and we get to a moment outside where we get caught by some Fedra agents, and Ellie actually saves the day and kind of fucks one up, and it opens the door for Joel to attack, Tess to attack, blah blah blah. And so they were in the midst of scanning Ellie when Ellie attacked him. So Joel goes over and picks up the scanner, and this is where we find out Ellie is infected.
Mm-hmm.
But how she's infected, we don't really know. So Joel and Tess are sitting there going like, did Marlene fucking set us up with an infected person? Like how, what the fuck's going on?
Which would have been like the ultimate
Fuck
revenge.
you.
Like, fuck you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Ellie, is very scatterbrained. She's like, she pulls up her sleeve and shows her bite mark and says, hey, look.
This
like
is
this
3
this
days
is
old.
3
It's
weeks.
3
weeks.
weeks.
3 weeks.
She
yeah,
says,
that's right.
that 3 days is how much it takes to turn someone
Yeah.
over. So, and he's like, Joel's like, I don't give a fuck how you got infected. Like, and he's like, and she's like, it's 3 weeks. Like, this is real. And so, they don't really know how to handle that. So they just continue on. Fast forwarding a little bit, there's some cool moments, like we get introduced to the clickers. The clickers are another stage of the infection where the overgrowth has like literally bursted through their face, their head,
So
like
they're
their
blind,
throat, their
obviously.
chest. So they're blind now. So what they're doing is they're using echolocation. So they use like clicks with their mouth.
Here, girl. You're all right.
I mean, it's more like there's more of a thud to it.
Yeah.
Like it's a very like
It's like the best way that I was thinking about this to describe it is it's a slightly slowed down version of what the Predator sounds like.
Yeah.
yeah.
It's very back of the throat clicking.
Yeah, so, and clickers are fucking horrifying because their face is like literally like split down the middle.
And they will fuck you
And you
up.
can only kill them in this game with a shiv or a melee weapon, right?
So,
Yeah, you can shoot
there's-
them. Yeah,
you can shoot them too.
Well,
Just
Yeah.
like,
It's
it's
hard.
you have to have an actual weapon.
And
Yeah.
like a shotgun, usually one shotgun shell really close on will kill them. Obviously, like Molotovs
I should
and bombs.
rephrase, you have to headshot.
They're special. They're
Yeah.
like you can't. The only thing that you can't kill them with is a melee, like hands, because they'll
That's right.
they'll straight up just like, hey, you know what? No, and then they'll bite your fucking
No,
neck.
bro.
I love that animation where they swat away your hand and they're just
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna fucking
They're
kill
like,
you."
Yeah.
bitch.
They're horrifying. They're really scary, and they're really cool. They remind me a lot of The Witch in Left 4 Dead,
Yeah.
Yeah.
where it's like you can outright avoid them if you can, but it's really easy to get caught by them.
And it's especially hard to avoid them if they are mixed in with runners, because
Oh, yeah.
runners will spot you and then you have to deal with them.
Yep,
Yeah.
you're right. So runners are the ones that you can take out the same way you can incapacitate a human enemy. You can just choke them out, but with clickers, you have to have a homemade shiv, like a piece of glass or a knife or something. But like you can make your own shivs, and
You can, if you have like a 2x4, you can get them with that. can't
oh
you?
yeah.
Yeah, but it takes like a hit or two usually.
Yeah.
Yeah, it usually will take up most of your melee weapon. Because your melee weapon will be like, a 2x4, a pipe, a fucking, what's the other one? A baseball bat. There's a bunch of different ones. And then there's the one-hit kill weapons where like an axe or there's not a machete in that one. But,
There
Clickers
is
are-
in there.
there's not a machete in
I think so.
No,
the
there's
first
just the crafted stuff where you
Okay.
can put
I
stuff
thought
on the baseball bat or on the
Oh,
2x4.
right, yeah.
and-
Yeah, that's something cool that we can talk about is the crafting system. So you find like little things throughout the world, like sharp objects, like broken scissors or pieces of glass, and there's like bandages and
Alcohol.
and rags. Alcohol is a big one.
Tape.
And
You
tape.
need tape to make
Yep.
your melee weapon.
Then gears
gunpowder.
and nails. and-
Yep, and gunpowder. And then you are introduced to this like huge array of things that you can make. So you can take alcohol in a cloth, right? Yeah, it's alcohol in a cloth, and you can make either a health kit or a Molotov cocktail. And so you can.
Mazel tov.
Yeah,
Mazel tov.
that's introduced as kind of like one of those things where it's like it's
L'chaim.
Shalom. Okay, we're good.
so you can use the rags and the alcohol for two different things. You can make a health kit, or you can make a Molotov cocktail. And what's really cool is that it gives you the choice to do that. Like, do I want to be safe and do a health kit, or do I want to make sure I have this fucking firebomb?
The way that I usually played it out is if I had more than one of the other, I would always just go to the other.
Yeah, sometimes it's a very tough decision.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and because you never know when you're going to come across any more alcohol and rags.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's all sorts of other cool things you can do. You can make like a nail bomb, which is like you can either throw it as like a grenade, or you can place it as like a trap, which is really cool.
Those are great for bloaters.
Yep. Oh yeah. And you can upgrade your melee weapon by like basically strapping 2 fucking broken scissors on it, which is fucking horrifying. But they're 1-hit kills for any enemy, which is really cool. That's pretty much it for crafting. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can craft in there, and it's cool the way that like that decision making that you have to do on the fly. And the cool thing is too is that it happens in real time, so you can open up your backpack and do stuff when there's an enemy in the next room, and it's all on you. Like if you get that shit done fast enough, and there's an upgrade system with pills.
Oh, the pills. That's
with the pills where you can upgrade Joel. And there's like a bunch of other things, like you can upgrade his health, you can upgrade like how much health packs do. Listen mode. With listen mode is kind of cool, where it's like you just hold down R1 and you can like hear people, like their silhouettes up here through walls and stuff.
Kind of like Daredevil vision.
Yeah. But you can use those. You can use those gears to upgrade your ammo capacity.
There's scrap that you can find where you can upgrade your guns and stuff like that, which is really cool.
Well, one of the hard parts, though, is you can max out what you're carrying as far as parts. And so one of the things I struggled with was, like, do I build something right now that I hope maybe I need later to pick up these parts? Or, like, what do I do?
Yeah.
So,
there's just the way that they implemented that decision-making and how those choices last. You know what I mean? It's really, really cool. So we get to where we need to take Ellie to, right? Capitol building. And the Fireflies are dead. The people that were, that were supposed to be there are like super duper dead.
They're super dead.
were they killed by the military or
they are more than
clickers?
I think infected.
Was it infected? Okay.
Well, I don't know. It could have been Fedra. It could have been.
No, because I think one of them leaves a note, so I think it was infected.
He was only mostly dead.
It's funny.
Not
because
super duper.
One of the voice lines for one of the characters in Valorant after everybody gets killed is. He's a black British guy. His name's Phoenix, and he'll just go, "That's super dead." Like exactly like what you said.
We have another heartbreaking moment where Tess is kind of freaking out. Mm-hmm. We don't really know why. Like, why is Tess so invested in getting this girl to where she needs to be, right? And it's revealed that Tess was bitten on her right shoulder. And Joel is pretty fucking upset about this. And she's like, hey, this happened like a day ago.
No, it was less she was like, this is less than an hour. And it's worse than hers.
I thought it was just early.
You're right.
Yeah.
She's like, this is really fucking bad. And that is not. Like, this is fucking real. Like, and she's like, hey, you need to take her to the Fireflies, take her to Tommy, whatever. Like, let's get this. Oh, and Tommy's still alive, which is cool. We didn't really know about that until now. But, like, hey, you gotta feel... And Joel's like, hey, no, fuck you. Like, this is your crusade. Like, don't bring me into this shit. And Tess is like, hey, you have to feel some kind of obligation to me, right? Like, after everything we've been through, which is another reason why I kind of think, like,
they definitely did.
They were bumping uglies, you know? So, and Joel's like, begrudgingly is like, fuck, okay. So
fine,
Joel,
I guess you let me put it in you. So.
And Joel's like really kind of heartbroken. He's like, "Hey, come with us." And she's like, "No, I'm fucked. I'm not gonna turn into one of those things." And Fedra agents start piling up at the door. She's like, "You go. I'll hold them back." And then we go up these stairs. Ellie's like, "Fuck, like that fucking sucks. Like we should have helped her, you know." And Joel just is pretty quiet. And you go up to the above level, and then you hear the shootout with Tess. You don't really get to see it, but when you're above the levels, you can like look down and you can see Tess dead on the ground, which is fucked up. And then you basically just continue on, and this is what you're doing now. Like your goal now is to take Ellie to Tommy, and the last time you heard about Tommy is he's in Colorado.
And he's one of the Fireflies.
No, he left the Fireflies.
Yeah,
that's why
did you
he's
know
in
that,
Colorado. Yeah, because they
Okay.
talk about it, how he used to be
Okay.
part of the Fireflies. They definitely, Tess even talked about it
Right.
a bit.
Isn't
So
he in
you're-
Wyoming?
So you're just basically
No,
going...
It's
Think
in
he-
Colorado, isn't it?
Jackson?
No,
Oh, yeah, you're right. You're right. It's Wyoming.
but I think he thought he was. Yeah, I don't know if they say that he just knows he's out
so
west.
the first hospital location that they're supposed to go is in Colorado.
So you're...
No.
So you're basically
UEC.
going there
That's
to
right.
to get Tommy's advice on what to
where
do.
they are, because you don't know where the Fireflies were going to take.
Well, and I mean, at
Ellie.
one point, isn't he just basically planning on going, here you go,
Yeah.
and leaving her with Tommy and going, this is your shit.
Yeah.
But what ensues is a, obviously very cinematic and very heartfelt and depressing and overwhelming journey through the United States
Mhm.
all the way to there. And obviously we go to some very notable cities.
With beautiful scenery.
Oh, yeah. We go to this one town, we meet Bill.
Good old Bill.
That's actually the next part. But Bill is a really cool character because of just the way that he is. Like, he's very,
Very self-sufficient.
very self-sufficient, but he's also very closed off. He
He's
doesn't let
not
anybody
trusting.
in.
You know who he's like the Doomsdayer on Tremors.
Yeah.
That's
pretty
who
much.
Bill
Or
is.
like the Doomsdayer
on anything.
on Doomsday Prepper
He
shows.
lives
Yeah.
in this town that nobody else is in.
Yeah, he lives in just a town, and
Yeah.
he's like booby-trapped the entire
Yeah.
town, and it's really cool. This is actually where you get the shotgun, and he's very vocally critical of Joel.
It's
Like,
also-
what the fuck are you doing?
It's also
here,
where
man?
you get your bow and arrow.
Oh, yep,
Oh.
that's right. Yep. And he makes several comments about like, hey, where the fuck is Tess? Like, what's going on here? And then he says, Joel doesn't really go into why Ellie is here, right?
He doesn't even respond back with what happened to Tess. He just plays along. Like,
He's
oh,
she stayed
she's
back,
doing something
you know?
else.
But he does also say like, oh yeah, this is kind of for her, you know. And Bill goes into this diatribe about like, hey, let me tell you about this story that I had. I had someone who I cared about, and it never really ended up being anything good for me. So the only thing that kind of stuff is good for is getting you killed, and which is pretty poignant. I think it's a nice little thing. Bill is a total fucking asshole to like everybody.
Complete tool.
Him and Ellie really conflict a lot.
Oh yeah.
Like the whole time, like she is just kind of like a loud, brash person.
Well, yeah, because she's just giving him shit right
My
back.
favorite
and-
line between them is when you're getting ready to leave after you get your gear in the bar, and he's like, all right, stay on my ass. And Ellie's like, be hard not to.
Yeah, yeah, and like there's little moments of comedy,
Yeah.
in it, like sprinkled throughout the game. We find out that he's the only way we can get a car, right? And that that's how we make it across most of the United States. I'm pretty sure, or at least to Pittsburgh.
That's how you get to Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So we find out a little bit of Bill's backstory. We find out a little bit more about that person that he was talking about, that he cared about. There's also a really cool school moment where we get introduced to the Bloater. The Bloater is basically like the worst phase before they
never
die.
Thought about it here until now, but if you're trying to go from Texas to Colorado, how do you end up in Pittsburgh?
We're not in Texas.
So
You're-
the game
no.
starts in Texas.
But you're in
they're
Boston.
in Boston. Okay,
They're in
never
Boston,
mind.
yeah.
I had kind of a
No, I hear you.
malfunction.
So
there.
bloater is what happens when an infected continues to eat, continues to thrive, and then just the infection gets worse and worse and worse and worse to where they become this fucking monstrosity that's 8 feet tall, the absolutely huge, covered in this the armor.
Spit like some acidic type
Well,
shit.
No, spit
Throws it-
spores.
it throws spores at you.
right.
What's really cool is in part 2, they rip a chunk off of their body and throw it
Dang.
at you, which is fucking really
That
cool.
is fucking.
But does that slowly kill themselves though while they're doing
I'm
that?
sure it is. I'm sure they don't really fucking think about it.
Yeah,
Oh,
oh my
talking
God,
about
that's
the
crazy.
samplers?
No,
Oh,
you haven't gotten to that part yet.
nope.
It's really cool though, and he's really hard to take down, but you have to take him down. But the game,
Especially in grounded mode.
yeah,
I was stuck on that part for a week.
yeah. So we escape from the school. We get this
truck.
Or no, actually, the school was like, oh, fucking, we don't know what to do because the car that we thought was there is actually dead.
Well, it had
It's
no
the
battery is
battery.
He stole the battery, that's right, because his Bill's friend stole it.
Yeah, Bill's friend stole the
we-
battery. He's like, that son of a bitch.
Yeah, so we eventually end up in a house, serendipitously, that his friend was at, and the battery,
Yep.
right? So, but we find Bill's friend, Frank, and he's dead.
Wasn't he hanged?
No, he hung himself.
He
Yeah,
hung
because he had
himself,
been
killed himself.
bitten.
Yeah. Oh, that's right.
Because he
He
had
bit
several
himself.
bite marks on him.
And the way that we know is that Bill like stops and looks at him, and then
Because him and
Joel's
Joel
like,
are arguing, and then he just stops dead in his tracks.
and Joel looks at him and he's like, "What? Do you fucking know this guy?" And he's like, "That's my friend.
He said that was my partner.
Yeah, that's my partner." And I know because nobody would wear a shirt that fucking stupid.
Yeah.
And so he cuts him down, and the house that you're going into, you eventually find the truck that you're about to use. And Bill's in there working around, and you find, it gives you the opportunity to run around, and you find this note from Frank that's saying, like, hey, I fucking hated every moment that I was with you. And what's cool is that the game gives you the choice to give that to him or not.
Yeah.
And I always give it to it because fuck you, Bill.
No, I think it's not a fuck you, because you can see Bill when he reads, he's like, fuck you too. It was a very, like,
He's
it's
very
a very
upset about
Well,
No,
but
and I feel like that's their way of
it's a
communication.
closure. It's a moment of closure.
And
Yeah.
I think it was sentimental on both of their parts in their own, because both of them are clearly fucking insane.
Yeah.
Because he's like, you never wanted to leave this town. And I said, fuck you. So you said that you could never get that battery without getting killed. And he was like, guess what? I got the fucking battery, but you were right. I got bit up. And, I think I'm sure there was like some argument that happened beforehand, and that's what like made
Yeah.
Frank
Right.
like storm off and like, I'm gonna get out of this fucking town, but
So then after that, there's a cool moment where Ellie's in the driver's seat trying to pop the clutch, and
I really like that bit.
it's a really tense moment because you're like pushing this truck down this slightly inclined hill, and you keep trying to push her, and you keep trying to pop the clutch, but there's like there's infected like constantly rushing you.
coming at you from the sides, and you got to take care of them.
And she eventually succeeds and pops the clutch and starts the truck up, and you get away. Joel and Bill are in the truck, and he says stop, and he gets out and he says anything else.
He
And
gives
he's
him
like
a
siphon.
the siphon. Yep. And he's like,
And then
you'd be
he's
surprised.
like-
There's a lot of gas.
He's
And
like, "Are we cool?" He's like, "Yeah, we're cool." Then let's get the fuck out of my town.
that's the last time you see Bill.
Yeah.
And then you go to Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh is a really cool stretch of gameplay where you find out about the Hunters. The Hunters are these cannibalistic people that are really bad. They jump people and they steal all their shit. Like, there's this horrifying note that you find where they like are weighing them and saying like, okay, we got a pair of pants, a pair of shirt, extra large, 32, a pair of shoes. Only one of them had only one shoe on, stuff like that. It's horrifying. In this little room where they've like stacked up bodies. And we'll kind of go a little bit through there because it's mostly just gameplay and a little bit of story in between. But we eventually run into Sam and Henry.
Well, we didn't cover the part about how when they get there, one guy tries to flag him down, and Ellie's like, "We should help him," and he's like, "He's not trying to help," and he just guns it, hits him.
You're right.
And then they all come out, and what is it? The bus comes in, and
Yeah, they drop the bus from the hill to smash into
which
him.
again comes from Joel's past with hunters and things like that. Like, he knows what the fuck they're doing.
Well, she says, "How did you know he's not hurt?" And Joel says, "I've been on both sides of this."
Yeah.
He's like saying he was the one who pretended to be hurt, and he fell victim to an ambush
Yeah.
before.
Not only that, also in the truck ride to Pittsburgh, there's this moment where Ellie stole a magazine from Bill.
Oh yeah.
And it's a gay magazine, and she makes the joke like, "Oh, I want to see what all the fuss is
Why
about."
are his
And
pages all stuck together?
he's like, she's like, "How the hell would you walk around with that thing?" And then she's like, "Oh, why are these pages stuck together?" And Joel's like, "Oh," and she's like, "I'm just fucking with you." And she throws the magazine out the window. So yeah, Pittsburgh is not a great place. There's a lot of fun gameplay there.
Yeah.
Eventually, we run into Sam and Henry. They're these two black brothers, right?
Mhm.
There's
Yep,
an older
brother.
one. I'm gonna guess he's like early 20s.
Early,
Yeah.
he's like mid-20s.
No, he was part of the, I'm going to think...
No, mid to late 20s, because he says he was like 5 years old when the shit went down, so he's got to be late 20s.
And he says he remembers the smell of backyard barbecue.
Because he also remembers ice cream trucks. Yep. Because Ellie is like, that's bullshit. Those aren't real. Yeah, so he's like late 20s, but he definitely is not in his 30s even, because he was not...
He's pretty
old.
young.
Yeah, he's still pretty young.
And Sam, obviously, is his little brother. He was born into this. He has to be like...
He's 12.
He's 12. Because he says, I'm 13.
14, because Ellie's 14, and he's like, sure, you're 14. But yeah, he's actually like 12 years old.
Yeah, okay. They just seem like normal survivors just trying to get through. They talk about how they were part of a larger group, but they got separated, and they were up in this one part waiting for them to come by, but they never did. And then... So now they're just kind of part of the troop with you now. So we come across this large armored truck that is gunning us down. Like, we ran into it before we met Sam and Henry, but like it continues to be a problem in the city of Pittsburgh. And eventually Sam kind of betrays you. Or is it Henry? It's Henry kind of betrays you. Like, hey, they got Ellie and they got Sam up on this truck, and they needed to hoist Joel up. And the truck was just like ramming down this door, like time was running out.
And he's like, "Hey, sorry,
goodbye." Like, sorry. And so Ellie jumps down because obviously she wants to be with Joel, and we escape. And then there's this moment where we find out Ellie can't swim, so they jump in this river to get.
I would assume that's the Hudson, wouldn't it be?
Probably.
I don't know. Anyways, yeah, just jump in a river.
It could be. To get away from the truck, they have to jump in this water. And, Ellie can't swim, so Joel's, like, trying to get to her as fast as possible, and he does. But he hits his head on a rather large rock, and then we wake up on a beach. Somewhere, obviously, I guess somewhere near, but Sam and Henry are there again. And so Joel immediately is like...
I'm gonna fuck you up.
Boy, you about to
You remember
get
me?
it. You are about to get it.
And so Henry...
I lived, bitch.
Yeah, and Henry's just like, oh, yeah, what's up? And then Joel, like, fucking... Doesn't he punch him? Like, punches him, punches him, and takes his gun, and he's, like, about to shoot him, and both Ellie and Sam are like, whoa, 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 like, they saved us. And, yeah, he almost fucking killed Henry right there, but Ellie was like, hey, they saved us, they pulled us out of the water and gave us, mouth to mouth, and we're alive.
I think it was more when Ellie was like, he saved you, but then she's like, he saved me, and that was the moment when he was like, oh, you saved Ellie. Alright, I won't kill you.
So I won't spoil the next couple parts because I feel like it's kind of something that's left better for Discovery. Ish's story in the sewer and everything like that. I think that's really cool. Mm-hmm. So moving right along, we get to the point where we come across the suburban area where there's a sniper perched up in this house. And so you have to avoid his sniper fire, and he's just yelling all kinds of shit at you, like, I can still see you.
You think you can hide in that house?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're fucking done.
This part on grounded mode was like,
well, you're not shooting me.
Oh,
so
it was like making me want to tear my fucking hair out. That and the part when you give Ellie the rifle.
Oh, yeah.
Because on
doesn't help you.
Well, she does, but like the way that I was handling grounded mode was I was like 100% stealth. Like, I can't get caught because, the second I get hit at all, like, I'm dead,
You can take a couple bullets.
You can, but it's... not only that, you don't really know because you don't have your HUD, right?
Yeah.
So you get up there, you kill this sniper guy, which is kind of cool. You have this little showdown up there. He's hiding, and then he, like, pops up. And obviously it's a video game trope, but, like, mash square to fucking get rid of...
I love when you... After you take him down and you look around, because he's got like a fucking tripod set up.
Yeah, he's got a 50 caliber.
He's got the whole thing. He's not just like sitting at a window with a hunting rifle. Like he's got.
No, it's everything. A military sniper. Yeah. Like there's
So this part's really cool because you get on, like you said, you get on the sniper, and then there's a bunch of dudes like swarming Sam, Henry, and Ellie. And so you're like taking them all out, and then eventually the fucking truck comes back, and you're like, shit, like what do we do, And so these guys are just hiding behind these derelict cars right here, and this thing is just firing down on them, right? This turret on top of this.
And they're barreling into the cars. They're driving, they're smashing the cars too.
Yep. So eventually they realize like what they're doing isn't really doing anything worthwhile, so now they start chucking fucking cocktails at them, right? Molotov cocktails. And so there was one where he just like the first time he does it, he just throws it outside the hole. But then the second time he gets up and tries to get some aim out of it, and that's when you get the chance to shoot him.
Which I think was a way cool way to take down that truck.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, like, just shooting at it would have kind of been cheap.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so the fact that it had to be like a burning from the inside.
Yeah,
of the
because
truck.
he just drops the Molotov cocktail into it and
Yeah. And then it explodes
cool.
from the inside out. Yep.
And then they do like the driver obviously slams on the gas and just like rams into a brick wall, and then
yeah.
they're done.
So this attracts the attention of a lot of infected. And so now you're like taking out infected, and there's a moment where they come from the side and they attack both Ellie and Sam. And so you have to make the choice of like, which one do I shoot? You know what I mean? Which one do I save? I always save Ellie because I know the outcome. You know? But, and I've tried it differently. Like, do I shoot, I've shot the one that was on top of Sam, and obviously it doesn't change anything.
Yeah.
So we find a radio tower to camp up in. They share like this memory about Henry wants to get like a Harley. He's like talking about how he sees it in his dreams and shit. Very heartfelt moment. Ellie and Sam have another heartfelt moment where Sam's like, hey, like, how come it seems like you're never scared? And she's like, who says that I'm not?
Yeah.
Like, I'm fucking terrified. And then they have like the conversation of like, do you think that those, like, there's still people in there? A lot of talk about being infected. And Ellie pulls out this little toy that...
Little Voltron.
Little Voltron toy, Transformer toy that Henry said he couldn't have. And so but she stole it and gave it to him. And
Which, in part 2, you see.
Yeah. Yep. That's really cool. Yeah.
Right at the beginning, inside of Ellie's apartment. If you look over to the right, on top of the little cabinet, you just see the little Transformer toy on top.
And this is another one of those moments where it's like, God, did you have to? But I'm kind of glad you did, because it added a lot of fucking heaviness to it. When Ellie says goodnight and leaves the room, you see he like pulls up his pant leg and it reveals that he was bitten. Sam was bitten. So in the morning they're cooking stew and he says, hey, good morning to Ellie, and says, hey, why don't you go get Sam? And she walks in the room and Sam's like, fucking
twitching
and shit, and attacks her. And Joel, reaches for his bag and like tries to grab his gun, but Henry shoots at him and says, no, that's my fucking brother, and after that, he's like, well, what the fuck are we gonna do? Henry shoots Sam and kills him, and obviously this is very intense, and Henry doesn't really know how to handle his reaction, doesn't really know how to handle this. And so he points the gun at Joel and says, like, hey, you fucking did this. You did this.
This is your fault.
This is your fault. And he's like, whoa.
Joel's like, I didn't bite him.
Well, we don't know that. I mean, he might have also bitten him as well.
He's just like, hey, let's think this through. Like, give me the gun. And then, obviously he turns the gun on himself. And god damn does this scene just fucking wreck me.
Yeah.
Like probably more than the beginning.
It's a very quick scene.
It happens so fast. And a really cool thing that I think that they added is that they didn't really give us the chance to see these characters grieving. Like, we didn't see the aftermath of this.
Right.
Like, it kind of, like, he, and then it, like, cuts to black after Ellie says, oh my god. So it's like, we don't really get to see what happens, how they handled it.
We didn't really get to see, like, I mean, you see it kind of later on, like, throughout the game, but you don't really get to see Joel grieving for Sarah either. Like,
Right, it's
Yep.
kind of the same thing over again as like,
I mean,
she dies.
You see that, but that's all you see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You literally see her die, and then it cuts to the opening credits.
Yeah. So after that, we get another time jump. We go to fall. We're outside of Jackson. We're about to get to Tommy's, and they have like little moments where they talk about it, and Joel doesn't want to talk about it because he doesn't like uncomfortable things. And then we find Tommy, and we have this moment where we're coming almost to the end of the game for Joel, like the end of his journey, because he's like, hey, Tommy is here, he's alive, he's capable, like, here you go. Take the girl to the Fireflies. The Fireflies is your bag. But it turns out that Tommy is actually thriving. Like, he's come across this community that's camping out. They have this huge settlement in Jackson. You actually meet them outside of this power plant, this water power plant they're in the middle of getting running, and you walk through, and they did get it running. And he says, all right, let's go. In the beginning, he says, hey, let's talk, And so we go into this little room, and he starts saying, like, hey, she's immune. He says, no fucking way. Like, what are you talking about? And he's like, I've seen her breathe enough spores to take 12 men down. And I wouldn't believe it myself until I saw that. And so Tommy's just like, fuck you. Like, I've got, like, and when they're walking up, he says, that's my goddamn brother. And he walks up, and it's alluded to the fact when you're walking up to the power plant that they had a rocky end to their relationship.
Right.
Like, something happened where they had, like, a massive disagreement, and
split.
And Joel actually says the phrase, like, the last thing he said to me is, I never want to see your goddamn face again. So it's like, things are kind of rough between Tommy and Joel.
Isn't it his wife that greets them at the gate?
It's all of them. They're all up on the top. Yep, but the only one that you see is his wife.
Yeah.
And he makes a comment like, oh, I'm glad you didn't blow my head off. And she's like, well, that would have been weird considering you're my brother-in-law. And then that's like, and Tommy's like, oh, we all have to get hitched sometime, or we all have to settle down at one point.
People be fucking.
So Tommy wants nothing to do with this. Like, hey, haven't you done enough to me? And then they go into their past about, like, hey, Joel says, you survived because of me. And he's like, at what cost? Like, I have fucking nightmares of what happened. It wasn't really surviving. It was something way worse, and Tommy holds that against him, which I'm gonna assume had something to do with why they disconnected in the first place. But bandits attack, go in there, and you fend off a bunch of them. I guess during all this, Tommy has a change of heart and says, all right, I'll do it. And he's like, goes over and talks to his wife and says, hey, I have to do this. I have to do this. And his wife is like freaking out, like, fucking you tell him to go somewhere else or find someone else or something, And after that, she walks up to Joel and says, hey, he better fucking come back alive. And so Tommy basically accepts it.
She says that in the second one, too.
Yep.
When she sends Ellie off.
Yeah.
Bring my...
Well, I think what brought them back together, wasn't it? They talk about Sarah?
No, so he doesn't want anything to do with Sarah. Like, what happens is that when they're walking through the power plant, he says, hey, I went back to the old house, got our stuff. I think you would want to have this. And it's a picture of her in, like, a soccer uniform with a trophy.
Okay.
And he says, no, I don't want that. He's very, like, deflective, like, hey, I don't want anything to do with that. And so Tommy, is like, oh, okay. And eventually that picture somehow got to Ellie, but we'll talk about that later.
Maria.
Yeah, Maria, yep. Which is Tommy's wife's name. Yeah. Then we get a call over the radio, hey, someone stole a horse. Has anybody seen Ellie? Ellie caught wind of what was happening. And one thing that you need to know that we haven't really been touching upon is the fact that this relationship between Joel and Ellie has really been blossoming. Like, there's been moments where it's like, it's kind of watching Joel open up to the possibility of caring about somebody in this fashion, like a father-daughter type moment.
He's over there telling her things about the old world and what was in them. And
well, and a big moment that we skipped over is the fact that Joel almost dies because of him.
Oh, yeah.
And like, he's about to be dead and about to be killed by this person. And Ellie comes up and grabs the gun and shoots the guy and says, like, hey, and it's very clear, like, the emotions on her face are like, oh, fuck, like, I fucking killed somebody. And Joel's very apprehensive to give her praise. Like, hey, that was fucking stupid. Like, I told you to stay.
When he's being almost drowned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, I told you to stay put. And she's like, what? You were about to fucking die. Yeah, like a little praise here would be nice. And then after that, she's very upset. And then obviously there's this moment where they come across a bunch of dudes on this lower plane, and he says, here, take this gun. Take this gun and cover me. Choose it, says like, hey, this is going to kick a hell of a lot harder than any fucking BB gun. Just make sure you got it against your shoulder, stuff like that. And when he's about to jump down, he says, hey, just to make it clear, it was either him or me.
Yeah.
And like, it's his way of saying thank you. And Ellie, acknowledges it and says, you're welcome. you know.
Well, after he jumps down, she says, "You're welcome," because like,
yeah. And then after that part, he's like teaching her, like gives her a little gun, like just like a little pistol instead of a big fucking rifle. And it's just this little cute like father-daughter moment where he's like, you know, like the safety's on and you know how to turn that off. And he's like, and she's like, Joel.
She's like, I
know how to do it.
He just has a hard time expressing emotion.
So this relationship has blossomed quite a bit, but like Joel's still pretty apprehensive to letting himself in or letting himself open up to her. And so you go on this little horse ride trying to find her. You come across this after a bandit attack.
yeah,
There's this big farm that they come across, and Ellie's horse that she stole is there. So you walk up in there and you find her in this attic, and she's sitting there going through a girl's diary, and she says, "Hey, is this really all they used to worry about? Like which skirt goes with what shirt and what boy to take to a dance?" And Joel is like, "Hey, come on, we gotta go." And as they're about to walk out, Ellie says, "Hey, I'm not like her, you know." And Joel is like, hey. Well, what he says is he's like, "Ellie, you're treading on some mighty thin ice right now." This is probably my favorite part in the entire game. And I tear up every time this part plays. Because, like, the way that... And the fact that this is their auditioning scene. Like, this is the scene that they... So they got Ellie right away. Like, Ashley Johnson was the first person to audition, or she might have been the first. She was, like, of the first couple. And they were immediately like, that's our Ellie, right? And so they had a bunch of dudes come in trying for Joel, and none of them were clicking, and then Troy Baker came in and did that scene, like, fucking perfectly.
He was the youngest of the
candidates. Big time. And it's just kind of like a cool little aside. But he says, "Hey, we're not talking about this. Let's go." And Ellie says, "You know, I've lost people too. Like, it's not a matter, like, I know you went through that and I'm sorry that you did, but I've lost people too." And Joel retorts with, like, "You have no fucking idea what loss is." And she comes back, and this is where the tears start. She's like, "Everyone I have ever known has either died or left me, so don't fucking tell me that."
Yeah, and except for you.
Except for you, and then she pushes him. It's a fucking awesome scene. And after that, Joel, still pretty abrasive, like, "You're right, you're not like Sarah." And then they leave. And there's another attack, and we get on the horses, and we're just about to get back to the settlement with Tommy's settlement, and Joel's like, "Hey, you know, get off that horse and come get on mine. I'm going to take you," basically. And it's a real turning moment, because obviously Joel had some kind of epiphany.
Change of heart
on the ride there. And so now we're going to, what the fuck? It's a real school, isn't it?
yeah, it's a university.
It's a real college.
It's the
UEC.
Yeah, University of Eastern Colorado.
Yeah, what does he say? He's like, "Go Bullhorns?
Longhorns?
Go long? No.
Something.
It's a fake team though."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, you're going here," and then Joel makes a remark. He's like, "Oh yeah, go Bullhorns," or whatever it is. And so you go to this school, and this is
a great mascot for the school.
The fighting fish tacos. That's what it was.
So we get there, and this is where the Fireflies are supposed to be, but we get there and there's no one there.
There's
And
a bunch of notes left about that they went to.
This is like kind of one of the freakiest notes. This is when you start seeing recorders, and one of them is a guy he's the caretaker of these monkeys that they're experimenting on, and he's like, "Oh, you know, they're leaving, right? They're leaving this area," and they're saying to kill all the monkeys, but he's saying like, "Oh, you know, fuck that. I don't want to do that. Like, I just want to set you guys free." And he like bends down and starts like, you know, petting at one of the monkeys, and the monkey fucking bit him, and that's how he died. He actually, you know, he kills himself, but he's like, and like on the recorder you can hear him be like, "Oh, fuck," you know, like that realization, like an infected monkey just fucking bit me, dude. And
damn it, I should have fucking killed him.
fucking bitches.
Yeah, what was he thinking? Like, I don't want to kill him. He's like, and you're going to set him free, but they're just going to go attack people and infect people.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you know, you come across that little courtyard area where they're all like congregated, and when you run towards them, they all run away. And Ellie's like, "Oh, monkeys!" You know, like she's kind of in awe of it. And
Could monkeys survive in Colorado?
probably,
Well, with the way that like everything's like returning to nature.
Yeah, but I feel like it would still get really cold there. I don't know, like...
could be. I don't know.
Ah.
Pack mentality. They could probably huddle together.
So we find out that
We
everyone's gone.
Yeah, we find out they're all gone, and then it's a tape recorder, and they're like, "If you find this, we're all gone." And Ellie's like, "No shit." And
I would never have known not for that tape recorder.
but after this tape recorder, after listening to this, we've got a new destination: Salt Lake City.
Saint
Lake City.
So, but we're about as we're leaving this room, we get attacked again, and
Always getting attacked.
Like you do.
so we're running through this building in this university, and there's this moment where Joe gets caught up on this railing and falls down, and actually falls down on a broken piece of it's rebar, right?
Yeah.
And it like
Yep.
goes right through him, like barely misses his spine, and goes like up and out.
It's like just right through his side.
Yeah. And well, it's like directly,
Yeah, it's kind of like here.
like almost in the middle.
It's
Like,
off to the
barely
side,
missed
but
its
just
spine.
barely.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. And so he's fucked up, and Ellie's just like, "Hey, let's go. Like, we got to get the fuck out of here." And so she like,
He's like, "Give me a minute."
yeah, she like pulls him up
Oh,
off of
yeah.
it, and it's really gross. And he
Yeah.
like the scream that he gives is fucked up. And it's just this moment when you're like losing consciousness, trying to get out of this building, and Ellie really kind of saves the fucking day, and even gets like smashed in the jaw with a fucking pipe, if you remember that.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
she gets fucked up, but she saves him, right? So Ellie's on the horse and puts him up on the horse, and they start riding off, and Joel falls down. And then we get this snowy landscape. Oh no! It cuts to winter.
Yep. It
Yeah,
cuts
it cuts to
to winter, and you're still trying to figure out, as Ellie, like you're trying to hunt, get food, try and figure out a way
bunny.
Yeah,
Very sad.
The bunny.
try
Oh,
to
that
figure out a
meme
way
video.
to
Yeah.
get Joel better.
Yeah. So this is kind of like one of those moments where like Naughty Dog even lied, like because they were being questioned, and they're like, "Hey, do you ever play as Ellie?" And they're like, "No, you play as Joel the whole game." And then in the documentary, Druckmann's like, "Sorry, Game Press, we lied to you." So yeah,
I love Druckmann.
you're playing as Ellie now, which is a huge fucking jump. Like, you're sitting here going like, well, I don't know about you guys, but when I first played, I was like, oh, fuck.
Yeah, like
Joel's dead.
it's jarring. Yeah,
Yeah.
because you don't know what to make of it.
I mean, he is on the verge of death,
Yeah.
and
Well, not only that, that's a huge time jump.
Yeah,
Like,
oh,
that's
yeah.
months of a time jump, So you're like,
Because at this point, he's in the garage or
Right.
the basement.
the
The
garage.
basement.
Isn't it the garage?
in the basement.
The
He's in
horse
the
is in the
basement
garage.
of some
So,
house.
yeah, he's in the
okay.
basement of this house in the middle of winter with nothing but maybe
Like a
like his
blanket?
coat. To,
Well, he's got like a sleeping bag on. She
That's
found
right,
some kind of
that's right,
sleeping
yeah.
bag, and she put like
And a
other blankets on
Dirty
top of him.
mattress.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she's just trying to find stuff. Like, she kills this rabbit, obviously. There's this cool little part where you're, like, hunting a deer.
Mm-hmm.
And, you kill the deer, and the deer runs away and dies in front of this little shack. And this is when we meet David.
Yep.
David, masterfully voiced by Nolan North, which is really cool because I had no idea until that documentary.
Yeah.
Because the way that he, like, alters his voice is really cool.
well, it's
David-
like with Ryuji in Persona and Red in Final Fantasy. Like, if you didn't know, there's
The
no way you
range.
could make
Yeah,
that
the
connection.
range that is really impressive.
Yeah.
She says, obviously it's a person that she doesn't know. So she's got the rifle on him, and he says, "Hey, we've got food, warmth, shelter with us. Why don't you come back with us? We'll take the buck back, and we'll get it."
Well, the
cut
main
up
thing
and
is
stuff. And,
the medicine, and he's like, "We have antibiotics."
and she's like, "Oh, yeah, I need that.
Yeah.
Like, I'll give you this whole buck if you just go get me some antibiotics." And so he sends one of his people, one of his dudes off, and they're just kind of chilling right there, and then they get ambushed by infected, which is a kind of cool moment. Like Ellie like fends off a fucking bloater, and it just kind of goes to show like Ellie's no fucking slouch when it comes to surviving. And so
he holds his own with her too, which is kind of like a cool dynamic duo moment.
Yeah. For the time.
Well, and it's not only that, we get kind of a glimpse at his character because he was hiding another gun.
Yeah.
Because Ellie was like, all Ellie had was a bow and arrow, and she had an arrow on him and said, hey, if you make one fucking move, I'll put one right between your eyes, right? And she's like, hey, while we're waiting, I'll take that rifle. And then that's how she has the rifle. And
she's like, you had another gun?
Yeah. He's like, he totally lied to her. Mm-hmm. And he's like, of course I had another fucking gun. Like, what do you mean? You know? And so you fend off these infected, and you're sitting around this campfire waiting for the other guy to get back. And David starts talking about how he sent a couple of men out to a nearby town, and he had one come back and said that it was really strange because they said that they got taken out by a crazy old man, and get girl. This, a little girl was with him. And then this is when Ellie was like slowly getting up, putting the rifle back on him.
David's companion had a gun on her the whole time. And he's like, hey, lower the gun, give her the medicine. And then they track her back to the house.
Yeah, and so she goes back. This is when we find out about Joel. And Joel's, obviously he's
barely alive
in the basement of this house in the suburban area. And it shows the scene of her, like, administering the medication and her sleeping next to him and stuff and trying to keep him warm. And then she wakes up and, oh, fuck, they tracked me here. And so now, like, hey, I gotta get them away from Joel. So, obviously problems would arise. And so you get on, what's the name of the horse?
Callus,
that's right. So you get on Callus and start running away, and all these people are, like, trying to shoot at you, and, like, it's a pretty tense chase, and eventually you come across this like little hill, and poor Callus takes one to the fucking head and flies down this ravine. And now you're playing as Ellie, just trying to run away and distract them and pull them away from Joel. And you come across this like cool lodge area. It seems very Colorado, Wyoming-esque. And you're just kind of holding your own against all these dudes. And eventually David comes up behind you, grabs your mouth. And it maybe chloroform, I can't remember. But
knocks you out.
Knocks you the fuck out. And then Ellie wakes up in this like cell, and
some dude just cutting up a human.
Just fucking chopping a dude up, and you didn't really know what they were doing until you see the arm fucking fall off the table. And she's fucking disgusted. And
David comes in with
he leaves, and David comes in with some of the deer meat. And he's like, hey, eat up. And she's like, what is this? And he's like, it's deer. And she's like, oh, with a little human on the side or what? And he's like, no, it's all deer, I promise. So David really wants Ellie to be a part of their community. So he's just like, hey, we can tell them, you're very capable, you'd be a great asset to this community. And Ellie wants nothing to fucking do with it. So there's this, she's being, quite the little bitch to him. And he, like, sticks his fingers, like, on the door, and Ellie, like, grabs his hand. And this whole time, he keeps asking her, like, hey, what's your name? What's your name? What's your name? And she grabs his hand and, like, just, like in a reaffirming moment, like, okay, maybe he's not so bad. And then she bites the fuck out of his finger.
Mm-hmm. No, she cracks it.
Oh, that's right. She, like, breaks his fucking finger. She made a comment about, like, well, what are you going to do? Chop me up into tiny little pieces? And he's like, no, I want you to be a part of us, And then she breaks his fucking hand, and she says, my name's Ellie. Make sure to tell them that Ellie's the name of the girl that broke your fucking finger.
Yeah.
And then David's, like, very ominously is like, how did you put it? Tiny little pieces? Like, David's fucking had enough, And then we cut to Joel. Joel wakes up, and he's like, oh, fuck, where's Ellie? Like, he's like, hunched over. And we're trying to find Ellie, and then we come across like kind of the remains of the people that stayed back trying to find Joel.
Yeah.
And you obviously fuck them up.
Dispatch of them.
Yeah,
quickly.
You come across two of them that you just incapacitate, and then you tie them up. And this is another one of my favorite scenes where he's like trying to get information out of them to find where Ellie's at. And he's just beating the holy shit out of this guy. He's got one tied up to a radiator, and then he's got another one tied up in a chair, and he's just beating the shit out of this one. And he says, hey, you're gonna... How does he go about it? He says, you're gonna tell me.
He puts the pen in his mouth.
So, but before then, because he does it in blood.
Oh, that's right.
So there's a sequence of events. So what happens is he's like, hey, where's the girl? He says, I don't know any girl. And then he stabs him in the in between his kneecap and his femur bone, right? And he's like, hey, and then twists it, and he's like, hey, I'll pop your fucking kneecap off if you don't tell me what I want to know right now. And he's like screaming, and then he puts the bloody knife in his mouth. He's like, you're gonna mark where she's at on this map, and if your buddy doesn't say the same exact thing, then, bad news for you.
And that is, again,
Referenced
brought
in
up
the
in 2.
second.
Yeah. So he's like, I'm gonna go over to your buddy. And so he like walks around and he fucking cracks his neck, right? Off of the chair. And he's like, and the guy tied up the radiator, he's like, what the fuck, bro? He's like, he told you where he wants to, how are you gonna know? And he's like, I think I know. And then he fucking bashes his brains in. It's like, it's one of the coolest fucking scenes of the whole game.
It really is.
Cut back to Ellie. They're, she wakes up and they're like getting her out of the cage, and they're about to fucking kill her, cut her up. And she says like, hey, pull up my sleeve, I'm infected. I've been bit. And both David and his crony is like, what? Oh, fuck. Didn't she, or she bit the one guy. And so she's like, now you're infected. Yeah. What are you going to do? And they're both sitting there like, what the fuck? And she grabs the knife and fucking puts it in his fucking jugular and then runs away. David's obviously like, oh, fuck, and starts shooting at him. It's cool because she runs behind the hanging deer. And you can see the bullet go through the deer. It's just one of those cool things. And so now you're running away as Ellie, and this like blizzard is happening outside. And you're just like running through this town, trying not to get spotted, slowly taking dudes out one by one. And you come across this restaurant. And this is where you have your showdown with David.
Boss fight.
The
final stand.
Yeah, this is pretty much like the closest thing we have to a boss fight the whole game. And what's really cool is that there's broken plates everywhere. So if you step on these broken plates, David immediately knows where you're going. Yeah. There's 3 different phases. The first time he's pretty lazy. He's just like standing up, looking behind everything. Pretty easy to jump, go behind him, stab him. And then he like crouches down and he's moving a little faster and you can't really tell. And if you're using the listening mode, it's not that bad. But on grounded mode, you don't have listening mode. Yeah. So you just kind of have to go off of instinct, which is fucking terrifying, dude.
Grounded mode changes him.
Yeah, and then the third time, he's like, you can barely detect him at all, and he's crouched down, and he's like sprinting everywhere, like going real fast around corners, and it's fucking terrifying. And listening, he'll like stop and not make any noise, so your listening mode can't pick him up at all. And then you eventually get the better of him, and he knocks you out somehow. But the place is starting to
burn.
Yes, the place is starting to burn because in the scuffle, a lantern got knocked over. And so now the whole place is up in flames.
Well, no, he starts the fire.
Does he?
Yeah, he goes over to that little cooking station by the door, and then he sets a rag on fire and everything starts to engulf itself.
So you get knocked out, and then you go back to Joel. Joel, like, is in the town where you're at, and he starts going through, obviously, murdering everybody in his path just to get back to Ellie, and he comes across the burning building, and he's like, that's probably has something to do with Ellie.
Yeah.
So you go in there, and Ellie is, waking up, and she's like crawling towards, you see David is still alive as well. So you're like crawling towards this machete, his machete.
And he's also crawling toward it as well.
Well, he's getting up. So he's like, but you don't really know that because the camera's just only facing Ellie, like crawling towards the machete. And David like kicks you in the stomach and like gets on top of you. And it's implied that David is about to rape Ellie.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, it's weird because I didn't really get that the first time.
No, I didn't either.
And I still don't really get that until she says like, oh, he was gonna, And so...
But that could also be like, he was gonna
kill her,
murder me. It could be. But a lot of the discourse around this is like, hey, David was trying to rape Ellie.
And especially because she was so distraught about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, her voice was kind of like...
Plenty of people have been trying to kill her. Like, she'd be a little bit more upset about the rape.
Yeah.
So David's on top of you, choking you, you know, doing whatever he's doing, and then you're like slowly reaching for the machete, and then she gets it, puts it in his neck. He's screaming. She's on the ground now, and Ellie just goes to town, just, you know, chopping the shit out of his face. I'm only assuming. And then Joel comes up and grabs her and says, hey, you know, it's me. And that's when she says, he was gonna, and he's like, and this is when he says, baby girl.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of where I'm thinking, like, okay, we're now in father mode.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Joel obviously cares about this girl a lot. And then we get another time skip to
The spring.
This is spring now that we're outside of Salt Lake City. So we're getting there.
And you're going through the, I don't want to say jungle, but it's like the forest or the woods, and isn't it? Or is that no? That's before the school. I'm going back.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're on the high. It cuts to them on the highway.
Ellie's looking at this mural of the zoo.
Oh yeah,
on the highway.
Yeah.
It's not Hogle Zoo, but it's totally Hogle Zoo.
It's Salt Lake City Zoo.
Yeah. So Ellie is pretty distraught. She's visibly distant. She's, you know, very emotionally distant. She's not really talking to Joel. Joel's talking. He's like
turned into Joel.
Yeah, she's like weirdly high spirited. Or Joel is weirdly high spirited, where he's like, hey,
he's trying to keep things light.
Yeah, and he's like, well, this is when he talks about how he's gonna teach her how to play guitar and stuff like that, and
he's like, Ellie, you hear me talking to you? And she's like, oh yeah,
like,
sure.
oh yeah,
Yeah, she's a little despondent.
Yeah.
And then there's this moment where you can have like one of the optional dialogue things where you can go up to her and press triangle, and she's talking about how she keeps having this dream of
flying,
being in an airplane, and the pilot is not there, so she has to fly the plane. And the way that I've seen it described, and I really love this, is that she doesn't really have control over her life, but she has so much responsibility on her hands. Like, she feels an immense amount of guilt for Tess, for Sam, for Henry, for Marlene, for the girl in the DLC that we haven't talked about.
Right.
She feels an immense amount of guilt and responsibility for these deaths that she did. And that's the way that I interpret that scene, is like, she has all these people in this airplane and she knows that they're going to die, but she can't do anything about it. I really like that little optional thing. And eventually...
Because I kind of feel like it also is like her feeling defenseless when David was attacking her, too. Like,
could be.
She doesn't have control of the situation. Like, she feels...
That makes sense.
You know, because she starts to become a lot more distant after that. But, I mean, it's probably just like that breaking point of stress where you no longer can handle it.
Yeah.
And...
that makes sense.
Or it's like, you know, she's dealt with all these people trying to kill her, but going back to that theory... If he was trying to do that, she's probably never experienced that attempt
at all.
Either.
Yeah.
So she's just like, I don't know how to process this.
So we go through this little underground. We're traversing underground a little bit, and there's this moment where we get stuck underwater. We find ourselves underwater, and obviously Ellie doesn't know how to swim, so it's...
Are we not going to talk about the giraffe?
Oh, fuck. You're right. So we get up in this little part, and Ellie's like, she's handing you a ladder, and she drops the ladder and then runs away, and she's like, holy shit. And so you start like climbing up this building, and eventually there's this huge hole in the wall, and there's a fucking giraffe.
That's probably one of my favorite
There's a
scenes.
few of them, aren't there?
Yeah, there's a few.
Yeah.
But there's one like munching on the
yeah.
overgrowth inside the building.
No, Eddie, that's probably like my all-time.
It's a very Jurassic Park moment.
It really is. It really is.
That's because that's where you see the Mormon temple in the background too, right?
That's
which
cool.
Which is, you know, being
a landmark, you know,
Yeah.
like it's
I do like that they
personal.
do that. They throw in those actually existing.
They do it with
landmarks for
Pittsburgh.
every city.
Pittsburgh too.
Yeah, for every city they go to.
You have the Rocky Mountains in the background too.
Oh, it's beautiful. Like the way that they've rendered all of that, and the way that
It's
they
like
do
that that meme video where the meme where the guy's playing PS4 Spider-Man. He's like, I just got to this building, and he looks out his window of his apartment, and that building's right there.
So it's a really cool moment because Ellie is like really kind of like wary, like I don't want to get too close to it because I don't want to scare it. And then as Joel, you can walk up to it, and she's like, "Don't get too close," and he's like, "I'm not gonna scare it. I'm not gonna scare it." And then eventually you can get up to it and like pet it and stuff, and Ellie's like, "Oh, this is so fucking cool," and it's just like it is. It's like one of the greatest moments in video games, period, because you have this harrowing adventure that's juxtaposed with some really breathtaking, beautiful moments.
Yeah.
Which is really something that this game handles really well. And then, you go underground, or actually before that, you go down and there's like this cool part where you can watch all of them, like walking away.
Yeah.
And then after you're done doing that, they have a conversation. Joel's like, hey, like, we don't have to do this. We can go back to Tommy's and just live there. And Ellie, obviously, still dealing with the guilt of everything that's been happening. Like, hey, everything, it can't be for nothing.
Yeah.
And so they carry on. Like I said before, we're like underground. There's a moment with subway cars or some kind of trackway where you get thrown underwater, and Ellie is like in the middle of dying, drowning, when Joel pulls her out of the water. And he's like trying to do CPR, but there's these fireflies that meet you on the other end of this water.
Well, you don't know if they're fireflies.
Well, we don't know they're fireflies yet, but like they're soldiers, right? And they're like, hey, fucking show me your hands, put your weapons down, blah blah blah. And
Joel's like,
hey, I'm trying to fucking save her, and then they had like fucking hit him with the butt of the gun. Then you wake up in the hospital,
St. Mary's,
and
which I think is.
It's not a real place.
No, it's not. No, it's not. But there is a St. Mark's hospital.
Is there?
There is St. Mark's. Yeah, they might have just.
That's pretty cool. Then.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So you come across Marlene. Marlene somehow fucking made it here too, but she says with heavy casualties.
And before you.
Well, she says with heavy casualties. Yeah. We lost most of our men getting here. Like, it was not fucking fun. And then you find like her journals and shit, and you can like see what she's been saying. Like, hey, I don't really know if this is worth it anymore. I've lost all my men. Like,
she references Ellie's mom.
Oh, well, I can't remember Ellie's mom's name.
Is it at this point, or is it later that you find the recordings? I think it's recordings or notes where you find out, hey, they've tried this before. They've found other kids who are resistant to infection, and they've experimented on them before and come up with fucking nothing.
I don't remember.
That is not a thing.
I thought, no.
That's later.
Yeah, no.
No, because that's a lie that Joel told Ellie.
No, because the recordings, and it's just because the recordings are saying this is probably the most progress we've made according to previous samples. I don't know if it was previous kids or if it was like an animal or something but they talk about how previous attempts and how this is probably the most progress we've made since then.
Okay.
But yeah, that's later.
But we find out that the only way... So he wakes up and he's like, oh, where's Ellie? And he's like, she's fine. She's safe.
She's being prepped for surgery.
And she drops this little bomb on Joel, saying like, "Hey,
little bomb, just a little one."
Like, hey, she's, it's on her brain, like, and to remove it,
she's not gonna make it.
Obviously, she's not gonna make that. She's not gonna make it through that surgery. And so Joel, it's like, fuck you guys, and proceeds to kill everyone in the building,
which is probably the dopest part.
Well, it's kind of cool because they like give you a new gun. They give you the machine gun, and this part is really fucking hard. Have fun with it on grounded mode.
I will not.
I will not.
It's really cool,
I refuse.
And eventually we get to the operating room, and Ellie is obviously knocked out, and there's 3 doctors in there, and I tried to not kill the head surgeon, but you have
Bless
to.
his heart, putting up a fight with his little scalpel.
Well,
I dome them all, dude. I do. I go.
But you only
fucking
have to kill
psychopath.
the one.
I know.
See, and I
I know, but I
if
kill them all.
if I remember right, I think it's on the way to trying to save Ellie that I found the recordings.
Probably.
And because,
That would make
Like-
sense if they were in the hospital.
yeah, well, yeah, no, and they definitely are. They're in the hospital, and, I think you've already kind of decided that you're going to save her, but then you get this extra confirmation that this shit might not even fucking work.
Yeah.
She might die for absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bummer. And we get to the operating room, and this one guy is obviously trying to fend off Joel, and Joel fucking brutally murders him. And it's pretty clear that moment has consequences attached to it.
Yep.
And so now, it's the other surgeons are fucking screaming and like, "You monster!" And you unhook Ellie and you're carrying her out. And, oh, that fucking song that plays when you're carrying her out is fucking great.
Like, you fucking monster. And I'm like, I'll show you a monster. Fuck out.
You want to talk shit?
Gonna
Gonna get
kill
you.
That's the machine gun. That's the grenade launcher.
So we're carrying her out and eventually get to this elevator and take the elevator all the way down. And at the bottom level, you get out, but he hits the emergency stop button so they can't take the elevator back down. And you're met with Marlene down at the end of this, and in this parking garage. And she's like, "Hey, you can still do the right thing here. What happens to Ellie from here on out? How long is it before she's raped by a bunch of fucking scavengers, or she's torn apart by clickers? Like, when is that supposed to happen? And he's like, Joel's like, it's not for us to decide, and then she puts her gun down and puts her hands up and says, "Hey, you can still do the right thing here." And that's when Joel, pow, fucking, hidden pistol underneath his hand, underneath Ellie, fucking shoots her in the gut. And he puts Ellie in a truck, and Marlene he's walking up to Marlene, and Marlene's like, "Hey, let me live. And he's like, "No, you just come after her." Blows her fucking brains out. And so we're in the truck, we're on our way.
She took multiple shots to
Yeah.
get killed.
She's a tough bitch. So we're in the truck, we're on our way back to Tommy's, and Ellie wakes up, she's still in hospital, still in her hospital gown. And Joel lies. He says, "Hey, there's nothing that they could have done. There's nothing. It was a waste of time." And he says, "Turns out there was a whole bunch like you.
Dozens
even." And Ellie doesn't really believe him at all. So the ending scene of this game is you're playing as Ellie. You're on the outskirts of Jackson, Wyoming, and you're climbing up this as Ellie, which is really cool. You're climbing up this little hillside, getting up to the tippy top point where you can where you can see Jackson. And Joel makes a comment about, "Hey, I think you and Sarah would have been really good friends," and all this stuff.
She would have liked you.
Would have liked you a lot.
Just another little tearful moment.
Yep.
Pour one out for the dads in here.
Yeah. And so they get to the very top, and this is the ending cutscene. And she just spills her guts. She's like, all this shit that she's been holding in for the whole game. She talks about Riley, this girl that she was with during the outbreak, or not during the outbreak, during
Quarantine.
Well, when she was living in the QZ,
Mm-hmm.
and they snuck out, and they both got bit. And Riley said something along the lines of like, "Hey, why fight it? Let's just wait here and lose our minds together."
Yeah.
And Riley turned, but Ellie didn't. And so that guilt has always been eating at her, and she talks about Sam and Henry and Tess and everyone along the way. And she says, "Hey," and Joel says, "Hey, I've struggled a long time with surviving, and the thing that I've always kind of kept in the forefront is, you keep finding something to fight for." And those words are something that I've kind of learned to appreciate more and more as I get older. Like, there's a lot of wisdom in this title, and it's just it's disguised as a fucking brilliant video game. But Ellie gives him the ultimatum and says, "Hey, swear to me that what you said about the Fireflies is true."
He swore.
And Joel reciprocates. He says, "I swear." And then it's the shot of Ellie just knows he's lying. And that's what's really cool about the ambiguous nature of this ending is we didn't really need a part 2. You know what I mean? It could have ended just right there, and I would have been totally fine with just making up this own scenario in my head of how things would happen. It's definitely cool that we've got this new video game, but she says okay, and then it cuts to black, and we get credits, and it's a really poignant scene. I like it a lot, and it's just that ambiguous nature of it that makes it really fucking cool to me.
Yeah.
We may not have needed a part 2, but Neil, if you're listening, we do need a part 3.
We do need a part 3.
Absolutely.
I'm sure he's
listening. Why would they abandon this original IP so early when they have so many Uncharted games?
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
The music in this game is phenomenal. It's fantastic. It sets every kind of tone that it sets out to do, and it achieves every single one of those moments. If it wants to be sad, the music absolutely emphasizes the sad. In the hopeful moments too, the music that plays when they see the giraffe is fantastic. I don't know. I really love this game. It's helped me out a lot in my life, and I named my dog after this game. It means a lot to me. And part 2 is fucking brutal in every shape and form.
We asked you guys, the corporation, what you guys thought about Last of Us Part 2. Keisha Pie, she says that if her mom would let her play it.
Yeah.
that made me laugh really hard.
I'm with you, Keisha. If I wanted to play it, I wouldn't be able to.
She says, I wouldn't know because my mom won't stop playing to let me play.
Oh, I didn't know that was the reason why. I thought it was her mom wouldn't let her play because it's violent or something.
No, because she just won't give up the controller.
Good mom.
Old Mama Kim, the sweetheart that she is. I don't know what it is, but if Cole and Joey love it, it must be great.
It's because we both won't shut the fuck up about this game. We keep talking about it.
Jacob Davis says, playing it and love every bit of it so far. Ignore the fans that are bashing. It's a masterpiece.
Well, those aren't fans. Those are bitches.
Those are fake-ass fans.
Fake-ass Last of Us fans. Yeah, so thank you guys for submitting those. What do you guys think of the part 2? Spoiler-free, of course.
Holy shit.
The opening scene was cool.
I love.
That's all I got so far.
I love the callbacks to 1. You'll run into those.
Yeah,
Nice.
definitely.
Yeah, because I just barely got to the point where you now have control of Ellie. That's it. That's it. That's all I got.
There is a part where, obviously, Dina. There's a part where those two are going through these buildings. I won't say what for. And they come across 2 dead WLF members, and Ellie mentions oh, it's an interrogation tactic. You ask them this and make sure that their story matches up.
Yeah, it's pretty rad.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
This game is so great. I can't stress it enough. I think out of everything, as far as story and cinematics are concerned, my favorite moments are the guitar playing moments. And they're playing songs that we know, and
Which is really cool.
Really cool. This isn't much of a spoiler, but there's a part where Ellie grabs the guitar and does this super beautiful cover of Aha's "Take on Me."
Ooh.
Oh, it's so fucking good.
Make sure you spend as much
It's
time
haunting.
in downtown Seattle as you can.
And
Make sure to find everything. As soon as you find everything, you'll get a trophy.
So, I hate to interrupt, but breaking news. Last of Us Part 2 sales smash records to become Sony's fastest selling PS4 game ever.
So
boy,
so it beats
Ever.
Spider-Man.
Ever.
that's
good.
rad. We're glad.
Anyway, sorry. Continue.
Other than that, yeah, like Nick said, the callbacks and just it hasn't lost that element of how dreary everything is, how sad everything is. How
just like that visceral emotion.
Yeah. So I think it's game of the year for me so far.
I really liked seeing a couple things. I really liked seeing the flashback scene with the museum, where you're seeing both of them, but it's like years ago Ellie, so it's kind of like Last of Us 1 Ellie, but you're seeing it with the Last of Us 2 graphics.
Yeah.
And that was really cool. I also, when you're walking through the town and you're seeing everybody, like, you're seeing stuff that you haven't seen in the game before, like when you walk past the mom that's, like, helping her little baby walk. It's like, oh, I've never seen that in a game like this, like in the previous game before.
Did you see Gustavo Santaola, the composer for the game?
No.
Yeah,
the
it's
guy that has the dog.
So you know how the dog comes up and talks to you?
Oh,
or comes up and acknowledges you?
yeah.
Yeah, Gustavo Santaola, the guy that does the guitar for the game, is modeled in the game.
Oh.
He's on a rocking chair playing the guitar.
That's
and
right.
then it's not really much of it. It's not a spoiler, but the snowball fight.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
Fuck them kids up.
Yeah.
I fucked them kids
I walked
up.
right up to him and I was just like, fuck.
Well, there's cool mini games and
Surprises.
yeah, just like one thing that I want to point out is like it does the first game a lot of justice, but it still has like those wholesome and heartfelt moments that aren't necessarily sad. Like they put a smile on your face. Like this isn't just some trauma fest.
Like the whole museum thing.
Yeah, like that was beautiful.
Well, and we can't really talk about it because something pretty substantial happens in the first 2 hours of the game. And I gotta tell you, it's some of the most harrowing shit I've ever seen in a
Well,
video
but
game.
It really is a gut
but
punch.
something crazy happens in the first hour of the original too.
Yeah, no, it's
so-
not out of character for this game
Yeah,
to do
so
what it does.
like with the critics saying like, well, and the fans or fake fans saying that that's not okay that they did that. It's
on par.
yeah, like what else did you expect from this series?
Well, and I have my own opinions, but I can't get into my opinions without getting into spoiler territory. But
We'll save it for the spoiler cast.
it's
Which I can't wait for. I'm going to play the fuck out of this game tonight.
Well, I do want to give one spoiler from somebody who doesn't even own the game. The most mind-blowing part was to find out that in reality, Joel was just on PCP. This is all in his head. He's been killing innocent people the entire time.
There is
it's
no
dark.
apocalypse.
There's no Ellie.
There's no Ellie.
He's just wandering through grocery
He's
stores,
dragging his
murdering
daughter's body
everyone.
with him. He killed her.
He woke up in his bed on a come down and was like, oh shit.
Yeah, man, dude.
He's like going around fully stocked grocery stores, killing old ladies, strangling them.
Sony really let Naughty Dog get away with it.
Still at large.
The poor produce stalker.
Yeah, all the states
All
that
the-
he's
all the
going are
runners
just
that are
him
running-
running
all the
away.
runners that are running at him are actually cops trying to apprehend him. He just shoots them.
So to end on this, I want to plead with the listener. Please play the game. If you're a fan, if you're worried, even if you've read the leaks, please play the game.
Well, and
Context matters. It handles everything gracefully.
well, and don't settle on your opinion without also
And
playing
you
the
can
first one.
you can play
first.
it. You can hate it all you want after you fucking play it. Until then, shut the fuck up.
I don't care how you get. You can pirate the game for like fucking. I don't care.
I don't
Watch
think you can pirate
someone
the game.
watch
someone play
stream
it. Yeah, like it doesn't. I mean, even though playing it really helps too.
Oh,
'cause
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
But-
it's like gliding. It's like glossy.
Well,
It
my
feels so
my
good.
argument with that is I haven't played the game. I have watched you play the game at least 8 times.
Yeah,
So-
it's please. Even if you've been spoiled, even if you're worried, please play the game. Please play the game. It's fantastic. And all these 10 out of 10s does not mean a perfect game. It means essential. It means something that you absolutely should play, that you have the choice not to play, but we are recommending wholeheartedly play this game.
And by the way, if I can make it through fucking Death Stranding y'all can make it through this game.
Right, you hated the shit out
Like
of that
I
game.
fucking hated
It's
the
an awful
shit
game.
out of
It
that
is
game.
an awful game.
I mean, I liked what he was trying to do. I appreciated the game itself. I'm glad I experienced it.
God damn it, I am so jealous of you because you have not experienced the first 3 hours of this game, and if I could experience that shit
I can't wait.
unknowingly
I can't
again,
fucking wait.
I would fucking do it.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
It is gut punching.
Oh.
It is. Oh, I don't mean to gas
I've
it up.
already cried like 3 times.
yeah,
I'm
same.
so excited.
And I'll tell you what, like even knowing
Yeah.
how it was going to happen, I still was gut punched.
I'm stoked
It's-
as fuck.
I don't mean to gas it up, but it's like the beginning of the first game times 10.
Oof.
It's fucking hard, bro. It's hard.
I'm hard. You think that's hard? Feel these nipples.
And on that,
Perfect.
we will end our very long episode of The Last of Us.
It had to be.
It
It had to
almost
be
3
long.
hours.
As always, you can follow us on social media.
On Facebook at the Nerd Corporation, a podcast.
On Twitter and Instagram at Nerdcore Podcast.
Or you can shoot us an email at nerdcourtpodcast@gmail.com.
And if you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Search the Nerd Corporation and look out for our green NC logo.
If you're listening on YouTube, please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and turn on the notification bell. It really helps us get through, beat the algorithm, and things of that sort. And if you want to know the next word of the day, like poignant...
Oh, he said it! Are we turning this into a drinking game podcast?
No, it's Pee-wee's Playhouse.
Oh, either way.
Subscribe to our Patreon, patreon.com/nerdcourt podcast. Several tiers of loot to have access to, from stickers and shirts to Snyder Cuts and bonus episodes. We would like to thank our patrons. First, our Nerd Corporate backers, Anna Turkel, Jake Hurst, Fillmore McLaurin, and some guy that goes by Glenn the Simp.
Fucking Sam.
Are you backing your own podcast?
Why
I want to get the
not?
Snyder Cuts, man. I want to get the Snyder Cuts.
I'm sure you could just get this.
Yeah, I could just send them to you.
You lived the Snyder Cuts.
We were the Snyder Cut.
Our Nerd Financial Investor.
Glenn the Simp. Alright.
Nerd Financial Investor, Missy Marie, and our Chief Nerd Financier, Misty Anderson. Thank you guys so much for all your contributions lately. We've been amassing more patrons, and we want to tell you that they don't go unnoticed, and we thank you so very much.
Yeah, shout out to Jake Hurst, man. I haven't talked to that guy in years, but he was a bad motherfucker in high school. I'll tell you what.
Shout out to Fillmore McLaurin. He's been listening since episode 1.
He's the one that was like, "Oh, I can't wait to hear Cole's spicy take on Nomura's bullshit."
Yeah.
Yeah, shout out to that guy.
Yeah, I've known that guy since like 6th grade. So thank you so much. If you can't make a monthly contribution, consider supporting us on PayPal, paypal.me/Nerdcourt Podcast. Thanks to contributors like you and Dallin here, we've been able to get some of our best equipment that we've had so far. It also goes towards giveaways and loot and things like that. So we thank you so much for your contributions.
We also will have you on the show if you give us some money.
Yeah.
Give us your money!
Bring money. For the Nerd Corporation, my name is Eddie Lyon.
I'm Cole Simper.
Tepid nudes.
You're hot ass Lewis.
You took me by surprise because last episode you've just been saying your name.
Yeah. I like to mix it up.
I'm Nick Lewis, aka Hot Ass Lewis.
I'm Angela Wooden.
And I'm Kevin Hart.
Whoa, that's some vitiligo for your ass.
Oh, is that Kevin Hart? I didn't see him behind the laptop.
I thought I recognized him.
Keep it nerdy, y'all.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.